Ladies and gentlemen, the best way for me to properly introduce Robert Cody Snodgres is to read just this small portion of a rather extensive bio that he sent for our review. And here it is. Quote, "If I can stay alive long enough, unlike Seth Rich, Philip Marshall, Gary Webb, Michael Hastings, Vince Foster, etc., I hope to help join with patriots and Jesus Christ's angels to bring down this evil, demonic, satanic, deep state shadow government led by bankers, pedophiles, political criminals like the Clintons that are ruining our country. How many murders by suicide or accidents will these criminals be allowed to get away with? This is a spiritual war as much as it is physical. My dad fought in World War II at Pearl Harbor and Guadalcanal. My uncle fought the great evil of Adolf Hitler at the World War II Battle of the Bulge. If we don't stand up and fight now, we very well may lose the great light of American freedom forever." And then there's a quote here from Luke 8:17. "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." So we're going to get into a whole lot of stuff on this episode. So why don't we begin? Cody Snodgres, welcome to the program. Good to have you with us.
It's good to be here, John. I appreciate this opportunity to get some suppressed truth out, sir.
You know, I liked Philip Marshall. Talked to him several times personally over the phone, and had him on Coast at least once. And I'm thinking maybe more than that, with his book, The Big Bamboozle, and Michael Hastings too. And I remember right after Michael Hastings got, Mercedes-Benz aren't renowned for exploding, especially 3 times. Oh, there's the primary charge. Oh, there's the gas tank. Wow. I saw all of this on video, you know. I came on the air and I said, well, that's 2. Michael Hastings is down. At that point, you know, it was pretty much written on the wall. I wouldn't be hanging out with that outfit very long. But look, as I went through your bio here, the story has been hidden by death threats, high-level judicial corruption involving Bill and Hillary Clinton, and some DOJ, CIA, ATF, DEA, FBI, and IRS conspirators. And this is really interesting. In early October 1994, you were offered a job to bomb the Alfred Mura Building in Oklahoma City by Harold Leonard, now deceased after my long career as a bodyguard CIA asset. After refusing this job on moral and patriotic grounds, I was turned from a trusted CIA asset into a liability, a potential leak, and warned to leave the U.S. by another operative, ex-Special Forces Vietnam guy who once, I put in the guy myself, Cody didn't write that, who once hired me to bodyguard Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler prior to his murder by CIA operatives in Guatemala City. And then in 99, ATF DEA Operation Stingray. He was taped by hidden cameras while telling undercover ATF agent Blake L. Boatler about pedophile rings and CIA sex ops involving ex-Director Central Intelligence George H.W. Bush, other black ops. In Arkansas, involving Bill and Hillary Clinton, CIA, drug, arms dealing, FBI, CIA, covert mind control programs, Project Slammer, as well as my black ops job offer to bomb the Mura Building. 5 months later, I was planted with false evidence to silence me by Agent Boatler, who was later awarded the nation's top cop award by Vice President Al Gore. And U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno. ATF used the planted falsified evidence to commit perjury to the grand jury to indict me, while CIA disappeared the tapes and evidence of their involvement in these high crimes, like the Oklahoma City bombing. I'll tell you what, I'm a little tongue-tied today. Just never had anybody hit me with a CV quite like this. I mean, I've seen some pretty heavy CVs, but this one, yeah, I'm thinking this one takes the cake, Cody, seriously.
Right on.
Why don't we start at the beginning? Well, what? Sorry.
I'm sorry. We have a lot of people go, where's the proof and all this? We have over 20,000 pages of court discovery documents. We have ATF, DEA surveillance tapes. We did our own counter surveillance of the ATF and DEA surveillance. We took, me and Army Ranger buddies, we have pictures of all that. I snuck surveillance equipment inside the United States Attorney's Office, past all their X-ray equipment, and tape recorded them inside there. These tapes have never, ever been made public. They're highly sensitive. And we have them out on dead man switches around. All these records, everything is out so that if something happens to me, like our brother Philip Marshall and Michael Hastings, then this information is going to get out. I've kept this secret for 22 years, and I'm stepping forward now. My palms are sweating right now, so I'm trying to tell the truth in the highest and best way.
Cody, just in the interest of your integrity, our integrity, and everything else, the problem is some of these things have been committed by our government are so monstrous and so unbelievable that, well, that last part works. People simply don't believe it, because if they were to dare to believe it, what would happen to their little fragile psyches in many cases? And so it's important to us, and I'm sure it is to you. I mean, I'm not trying to start off our interview with any kind of an insult, but I'm saying, why you, man? Why were you put in this position? I know. You could ask me the same thing. So, how did you wind up? Tell us about you. I mean,
okay.
Are you ex-military? I mean, how did you get even close to CIA? I mean, how did this little snowball start rolling down the mountain and turn into this huge snowball that's like going to destroy the village that designed a bunch of ne'er-do-wells?
Yeah, I'm going to do that real quick here, but before all these interviews, we always start with a caveat. We don't want to break any laws, and we don't want to break especially the 1992 Intelligence Identities Protection Act, the IIPA. That's U.S. Code Title 50, Sections 421, 426. It states the disclosure of a U.S. government operative's identity is illegal only if it is done intentionally and with knowledge that the government is still actively maintaining a cover for such operative. And we always state that because the people I'm going to talk about, some of them are dead, and anybody that's active or anything, we won't mention any names. And we do that because of the CIA case officer, John Kiriakou, if I'm saying his name right. He was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison in January 2013 because he violated the CIA's RDI program, the rendition, detention, and interrogation. He was the first one to blow the whistle at Guantanamo and stuff. So he inadvertently named some agents, and they gave him 30 months to slap him on the wrist, So anyway, we got that caveat out of the way, John. And then back in 1974, I was at R.L. Turner High School in Farmers Branch, Texas. They're close to you guys. And I scored in the top 1% on the SAT test in physics. I went to East Texas State University, Commerce, Texas, where I had a full tennis scholarship. I was in the physics department, 1975, fall semester. One of the PhDs came to me, whispered in my ear, "There's someone here to see you." And I said, "Who is it?" He said, "It's a recruiter." And I said, "Well, they don't come for job recruitment till the May. Who is it?" And he said, "He's down there all alone. It's the CIA. He wants to see you alone." And I, after talking with him, I told him I did not want to work for the government. I wanted to be independent. I wasn't going to work for the government. And he said, "Well, we can probably work something out." And from there, I began working with a lot of Vietnam veterans that had come back from Southeast Asia. Some of them had been working operations for the agency there. And we'll talk about some of them later. And they trained me up, trained me in all the stuff. And I also did martial arts over the next 20 years, went to Japan, studied a little bit. So I began working with them at that point. And then in 1979, I went down to Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas, to work on my Master of Science degree in physics. And from there, we had a field trip at NASA and got to fly the Space Shuttle simulator and all that stuff. So I began working at Chevron Geosciences in Houston after graduate school, and then moved up to Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, for Amoco Production Company. I was a research and petroleum geophysicist. Here's where it gets interesting. These were my civilian covers. And as you recall, there's been a lot of information about Bill and Hillary Clinton over in Arkansas. It's not very far from Tulsa. And we were involved in operations there through the Mena Airport. The code name, this was in 82, 83, 84, 85. The CIA was running a covert operation. There were 3 of them: Centaur Rose, Jade Bridge, and Screwworm. The one I was involved in was Centaur Rose, Rose for the Rose Law Firm. And so they had passed the Bolin Amendment in Congress. That amendment, it was February of 1984 that Congress passed that. And it was in response to the war down in Nicaragua and the conflict there. And the Sandinista communists with Daniel Ortega was the president. They were being supplied by the Russians. And we were helping the Contras. And Ronald Reagan, the president, didn't like that Bolin Amendment. So he went around Congress's back and went to Director CIA and ordered these ops to support the Contras. They didn't want to change the balance of power in Central America. And so Centaur Rose was created in Arkansas to move arms from there down there and then bring drugs back to pay for the op. It was a black op. They couldn't get money from Congress. So I was right in the middle of all that with these Vietnam vets. And we moved a lot of arms. We did a lot of things there with Barry Seal, who was the C-123 pilot. He called it the Fat Lady. Out of the Mena Airport, he'd started Rich Mountain Aviation. There's a lot of stuff on this. Books were written by Terry Reed, Compromise, so forth. But anyway, to make a long story short, we were involved in all that. And so you fast forward into September of 1991. I had also been hired to bodyguard Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler. He had got quite famous in 1965 in Vietnam. He stepped on a punji stick and got an infection to Subic Bay Medical Facility in Subic Bay there in the Philippines. He wrote that famous song, Battle of the Green Beret. In 65, it went up to #1 here in the States. And I was working with some of the guys that worked with him over there. One of them was named Duke Flaglier, 2 tours in Nam. They all studied in 1963 with Barry Seal, the 20th Special Forces Group, the 20th Special Forces Group at Fort Benning. And so later on, after this op in Arkansas, Barry Seal had been shot February 1986 at a halfway house, and they also had 25 to 30 Colombian cartel guys hit the same day down in Colombia. Pablo Carrera, #2 Medellin guy, Jorge Ochoa. My girlfriend here, she has had dinner with Pablo Escobar before down in Colombia. So we had some real high level connections at the time. And so anyway, we bodyguarded Barry Sadler. That's a whole nother story that's in the book. We tell the story of what really happened to Barry Sadler. It's never been told before out in public. And so we can talk about that later. But anyway, we fast forward into, September of 1991. I had been in operation, and some assets had lost their lives. Their fathers were in the CIA, and they blamed us for their deaths. So we were targeted for termination in a covert project related to Project Slammer. And so we can talk about that later. There's a whole bunch of stuff there if you want. But I died twice in the hospital in that op, and they had to shock me back twice. And I was recovering in a wheelchair and everything. And I was getting towards the end of my career. I'd been beat up and messed up. I got broken bones, fractured vertebrae. My medical files state that I'm 100% totally and permanently disabled with severe PTSD. And I started drinking real heavily. I was having dreams at night and stuff, ready to quit and get out. And so in October of 1994, Harold Leonard, another asset contractor, contacted me. And we went out in the woods. And he always gets up under the canopies of the trees so satellites can't see him, and he's real paranoid. But he had a backpack with $500,000 cash. It was a purple and black backpack. And he set it down there, and he said, "We got a job for you." And I said, "Well, where are we going?" Saudi Arabia, wherever. We'd previously had jobs from the Saudi royal family that was paying $50,000 a month for a 6-month lock-in to bodyguard their kids and nieces and stuff, because they were worried about being kidnapped and held for ransom. But anyway, I said, "Where are we going, back to Saudi Arabia or what?" And he said, "No." He said, "This is a domestic job." And I said, "Oh, it's here in the States?" I said, "What kind of job is it?" And he said, "It's an EOD job, explosives and demolitions. And I said, oh, well, what is it? And he said, it's a federal building. And I said, what? He said, federal building. I said, which one? He said, the Alfred P. Mura Building, Oklahoma City. And this was 6 months before anyone ever heard about McVeigh. And the reasons why this building bombed are quite shocking, but the op had already been ordered. And so I went off on him. And I said, look, I'll go overseas and do this stuff we did, but I will not do this to our own people. There's no way. I said, you guys are crazy. You quit. And he had told me, we'll give you $500,000 now and then $500,000 when the job is done, and you get the standard DOD team, whatever you want, whatever you need. I was fixing to retire, and they were going to kill me to shut me up anyway, and then two birds with one stone thing. So do you got a question?
No, it's just that you were breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm kind of rapid fire talking here. But anyway, so I turned the job down. And then when the actual building blew up on April 19th of 1995, I went black. I figured they were going to kill me. One day after the job, Duke Flaglier.
Say that again, Cody. One day after the job, what?
One day after the job, my handler, Duke Flaglier, he had been with Barry got out of the Army and was working for CIA. He'd been mostly in Europe, but he was back here in the States. He's dead now. He's got Agent Orange cancer, so I'm going to use his name. He called me, and he said, you need to leave the country. And I said, why? He said, well, you know about that op. You turned it down. You turned from ability. He said, you need to get out of there. And he offered me the keys to his house in Belize and said, I'll meet you there, and then we'll stage you out from there and go somewhere. And I told him, no, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to say anything. So I went black, and we had false IDs and passports and everything, wig kits, disguises. So I went back down to Oklahoma, where we had previously worked in Tulsa, and it's not far from Oklahoma City. And the guys I'd worked with had a series of safe houses down there for the Centaur Rose ops in Arkansas. So they put me up there, and I stayed there. And I left the country for a little while and then came back. And then I did Nichols and for that bombing.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah. Go back just a little bit. I'm sorry. It's starting to do that digital bomb break thing. What about Larry Nichols? Just a sentence that included the part about Larry Nichols.
Yeah. When I got back, Larry Nichols and Timothy McVeigh had been indicted in the 10th district bombing, and I knew there was a massive cover-up going on and that they were the patsies. I was supposed to be a patsy, but for that, there's no way I'd even touch a bombing job like that for something like $1 million. It's not nearly enough. The Mura Building had been bombed, and I left and came back, and Terry Nichols and McVeigh had been charged with it, and they were up in the 10th Circuit Courts. And so that was April 19th, 1995. Well, in 1997, the ATF and the DEA began an undercover operation called Operation Stingray in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I had once been the largest machine gun and silencer dealer in the state of Colorado. I had a Class 3 shop in an NFA, National Firearms Act license, at Scientific Systems was the name of it in Colorado Springs. I knew a lot of the people around the area. We did work on DEA, did contracts with the SEALs, all kinds of stuff. We had a Class 2 manufacturing license to build silencers and machine guns and so forth. So anyway, by 1997, I had closed that shop down, but still knew a lot of connections in the gun business. And they began this undercover investigation. Their undercover agent, Blake L. Butler, he was an ATF agent, and we would find out later that he was at the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. We found film of him there hauling those the first dead agents. You know, there were 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians who were killed on February 28th in 1993 at that compound. I have friends that were personal friends of David Koresh. I was not involved with them, but they were their right-hand man of Koresh. They told me the real story of what really happened there. And that's in the book. I've never heard it public anywhere. But you fast forward to what we're doing here now in 1997, ATF DEA Operation Stingray. And I was talking to Blake Butler, and I'd been selling him legal guns. Everything was legal. And on April 20th of 1999, the Columbine High School shooting happened in Littleton, Colorado. And so that was a big deal, worst high school shooting in U.S. history. And so Bill Clinton and U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno were there. And I had associates, Captain Glenn Wilson, worked in the DIA. He's also in the Army in Vietnam. And when he got back to Vietnam, he was a no-narcotics head in Dade County, Florida with Janet Reno. So I had I know people that know all these people, Clinton, Reno, all this stuff. Well, anyway, during this time on April 20th, there was a lot of media. I drove down there 2 days later on April 22nd of 99. And Clinton and Reno were all on TV, and I didn't know we had undercover cameras there. I did not know the ATF and DEA had 4mm hidden cameras. And Agent Butler, we were watching them on the TV, and he said, "What do you think about Bill Clinton? And what do you think about Janet Reno?" So I spilled my beans. I mean, we were there just me and him alone. And I told him all the stuff about the CIA ops in Arkansas. I told him how I'd met Kathy O'Brien, the CIA sex slave, who had sex with Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton had sex with her 7-year-old daughter, Kelly, and a number of other things that were really inflammatory. I told him about the drugs and arms dealings in Arkansas. I told him about the Branch Davidian compound story, about the cover-up there, all kinds of things. And so this stuff was highly inflammatory. I talked about an hour and a half, and I named names. I did operation names. So 5 months later, I never saw Blake Butler since then. 5 months later, on September 16th of 1999, they planted me with false evidence and then arrested me on October 7th. And the CIA came and picked me up. And there was a whole bunch of ATF agents. I was lit up like a Christmas tree. I was fixing to go to Cairo, Egypt the next day. And I went to pick up some money from Blake Butler. And anyway, the CIA ran me in, and they asked me direct questions about Bill Clinton. They knew the FBI was going to talk to me, and they just didn't want me talking about any of the covert ops they knew I was involved in. And they were just going to sweep it all under the rug like some kind of domestic law enforcement thing. So I was planted with evidence, and they took me before in the 10th Circuit Federal Court. Now, this is all to shut me up because I talked and I know about all this stuff. And so they put me in front of Judge Edward Nottingham in the 10th Circuit Court, John. This guy was nominated to his position by Director of Central Intelligence George Bush Sr. in the 70s. Okay? So Nottingham was their CIA appointed judge, basically, in every case that had anything to do with national security or CIA magically got steered to him. They used what they call the Promise software in the Justice Department, and it correlated cases, and anything that was sensitive, they got sent to this judge. And then, of course, he'd make sure it never saw the light of day. Now, the prosecuting United States attorney at the time was none other than Tom Strickland. Tom Strickland had been directly appointed by Bill Clinton. So the fix was in. When Clinton first got to be president in 92 after he left Arkansas, he knew they'd been running a bunch of dirty ops down there, money laundering, the whole thing. And so he fired every United States attorney in the whole country and put his own guys in. He was the first president to ever do that. Tom Strickland was a Democrat here in the Denver area, and he had worked at a law firm of Norman Brownstein, Hyatt, and Faber. And it turns out that his principal partner in the law firm that he quit to be Clinton's United States attorney in the 10th Circuit was none other than Norman Brownstein. He worked for the Council of 6 attorneys for the CIA back when George Bush was there. So the fix was in here, okay? Meanwhile, McVeigh and Nichols were going into trial. The whole thing was rigged big time. And I have a lot of stuff in here about how they rigged the jury wheels. It just goes on and on. So Judge Nottingham said I was too dangerous to be in the regular prison population and ordered me into solitary confinement at the SHU, this special housing unit at the FCI Inglewood in Littleton, Colorado. And they put me in there 3 cells down from McVeigh in Supermax. They took out my mattress, took out all the blankets and everything. All I have is a pair of skivvies, and I slept on the concrete floor. They left the lights off for days. They were trying to break me. They throw me in there 6 to 8 weeks at a time. I was getting real weak because I was afraid to eat the food. I thought the CIA would poison me to shut me up about what I knew about the Mura Building. Meanwhile, there was a guy named Kerry James Gagan, Gagan. He was also a CI asset like me, and his handlers in Denver had given him a van load of C4 plastic explosives 3 days before the Mura Building went off. His job operationally was to drive that load of explosives down to Trinidad, Colorado, where he was to meet his contacts. He didn't know who they were. They had codes, and the contacts were 3 Middle Eastern men. And these men had copies of the Mura Building blueprints. And Gagan looked at them. They were in English, and he looked at them and got spooked. He got real spooked, and he thought, "Holy shit, I'm going to be Apache or something." So he drove straight back to the Secret Service office in Denver, and he told them, he said, "Look, I think I'm being set up. I don't know what's happened. I just took a van load of C4, and there's these Middle Eastern guys with plans of the Mura Building. What the hell's going on?" Well, the CIA got wind of it, and so they went and planted Kerry Gagan with explosives at his house, just like they planted me with evidence, and then they threw him in there with us. So now they had in the 10th Circuit, okay, they had me, Timothy McVeigh, and Kerry Gagan all together. We were the and Terry Nichols. We were the 4 people that had operational knowledge of this stuff with the Mura Building. And so anyway, make a long story short, they took McVeigh out of there on June 11th, 2001, and he was executed at the Terre Haute lethal injection chamber. His attorney at that time was Nathan Chambers, and Nathan Chambers saw the execution and held McVeigh's mother's hand there. And I talked to Nathan about 2 weeks later at the FDC, the Federal Detention Center in Inglewood, and I asked him, I said, "What was it like? You watched McVeigh get killed, you know?" And he just put his hand up over his face and shook his hand and walked out, shook his head and walked out. And I knew there was a massive cover-up. So Nichols had gotten 99 years in prison. We can talk about the Mura Building for hours. I know so much stuff about all that down there in the cover-up. But I'm just going through.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going through the timeline real quick here.
Yeah.
Anyway, so McVeigh was executed 2001. Terry Nichols had been given life without parole. He's down here in the Florence FCI in Florence, Colorado. And also down there is Alder James, our CIA station chief in Moscow, and also Robert Hansen, the 26-year FBI counterterrorism leader. They were both caught selling secrets to the Russians. They've been turned by the KGB. And that was all related to Project Slammer, which we can talk about later. But anyway, so McVeigh's executed, Nichols down, it's me and Gagan left. And so we were all scared to death. And we're in Supermax, solitary confinement, in the worst place they had. And so Gagan was taken out of there. That's a whole nother story there, but he was taken out. And Judge Nottingham, who was nominated by CIA Director George Bush, he court-ordered Gagan to go to the Springfield Medical Facility in Springfield, Missouri. It's a maximum security federal correctional facility where they send the criminally insane, and there's a medical facility. So he court-ordered him for a mental evaluation. And that's where they stick you in the back room in a straitjacket, and they give you the juice. And no one ever saw Gagan since. I don't know if he's dead or alive, or they scrambled his brain. What they were doing is making sure he'd never be able to go to court. So I was the last one left up there, okay, with the Mura Building thing. And I finally got out on a short bond. I've been there 18 months, and they let me out pending trial. And so I went about 4 years and never even had a motions hearing. Everything in my trial, every hearing except the bond hearings, were sealed. They kicked out the U.S. Marshals. They kicked out the court transcribers. They played those tapes that were made about the CIA back on April 22nd of 1999. The CIA took them from the ATF and hid them, and they played parts of them in front of Judge Nottingham in what they call an in-camera review hearing. And my attorney, Harvey Steinberg, he was the Denver Broncos football team attorney at the time. They had sealed hearings, and they saw that. And Harvey Steinberg came to me, and he says, man, you're lucky they don't just kill you. He said, you're never going to trial. They will never, ever let this stuff in any courtroom anywhere. Well, I was defiant, so we hired a tape expert. His name was Val Williams. He was a digital electronics forensic specialist. He did work for the Central Intelligence Agency at one time. He had coffee with 3 sitting presidents, Reagan, Bush, and Clinton. His job was to bug and debug the White House. And I hired him to work, and we had absolute proof that the ATF had tampered with the tapes and that I'd been planted with evidence. And so 4 years had went by. And Judge Nottingham said, look, this guy, we have to do something with him. We have to have a hearing. So on, let me get this straight, on July the 24th of 1999, he set a hearing, and he said, this is the last thing. We have to do this. And so on July the 7th, 2 weeks before that of 1999, I was cleaning my window on a Crown Victoria LTD at a Walmart parking lot on 8th Street, Colorado Springs. My wife was in there shopping, and I was leaned over the hood, cleaning the windshield, and I never saw it, but I heard it. And I heard a car approaching rapidly, and then the motor floored and the tires spinning and squealing. The next thing I remember, there was a crash. It knocked me back up into another car. I rolled over that hood. I bounced off the fender of another car and hit a concrete light pole, and I was unconscious. And I have proof of all this. I have all the medical records, everything. Now, this was 2 weeks before the hearing that we were going to get all this evidence. We had 100% proof. Valentine, the tape expert, told me you're going to take down the whole ATF office in Colorado Springs. You've got them with perjury, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit perjury, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and a whole host of other charges. And he said, they're never going to let you get this in the court. They're going to kill you. These guys were at Waco. These guys were at Ruby Ridge, where Vicki Weaver got shot in the neck. They were at the Mura Building the day it was bombed, but called in sick. He said, these are shadow government guys. The judge was appointed by the CIA director. The U.S. attorney was appointed by President Clinton. You're never going to get a fair trial. And so sure enough, they hit me in that thing, and I spent a couple of weeks in the hospital. My doctor told me, you're lucky to be alive. You're lucky it didn't kill you. So I'm almost done, and I was leaving physical therapy on a cane 2 weeks later after being in the hospital. I was walking out to my car, and there was a Colorado Springs police cruiser sitting on the street with the motor running. And as I got around to my car to open the door, they floored the motor. They jumped the curb. There were sparks flying everywhere. And I thought I was going to be crushed again. I started to roll back over the trunk, and then at the last minute, this cruiser slid sideways and threw rocks all over me. And sitting in the cruiser was the nation's top cop, Blake Butler, dressed in a Colorado Springs uniform, and he shook his finger at me. He's about 4 feet away from me, and he looked at me and shook his finger, like, don't go to court. So I was really shook up. I'd been hit twice now, almost killed twice. I drove home. I got here to my little cabin. I was sitting here watching a movie with my wife and young son, three years old or so, and up pulls a car in my front yard. I looked out, and it was Harold Leonard, the contractor who had offered me the $1 million job to blow up the Mura Building. And I'd had it. I was done. I'd been in solitary confinement. I was just done. And I didn't want my son to see me get killed and carry that memory with him the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So I went down there unarmed, and I thought he was going to kill me. I didn't care. I was done. I don't care. And he had his hands, Harold Leonard had his hands on the wheel with the motor running in his SUV. And he rolled the window down. And I said, "What's up?" He said, "Look, man, me and Harold were friends. We'd done ops together. I mean, he was my brother." He said, "Look," he said, "they've given us the order. If you go to court and talk about the Mura Building, we've been ordered to kill you." And he pointed right up here to my house where my wife and kid were. And he said, "We've been ordered to kill your family too."
Well,
and then Harold put it,
That's what happened to Marshall.
Yeah, well, Harold was my friend. He was coming to warn me. He put his head down on the steering wheel. He was about to cry, and he took a deep breath. And then he looked at me, and he said, "It's nothing personal."
That's good.
And so I said, "Thank you, brother, for giving me the heads up." So the next day, I called my attorney, Harvey Steinberg. And I said, "Look, I've had a change of plan. I want to change my plea. I'll plead guilty to anything you want. I'll do anything you want. Just leave me and my fucking family alone." And so we had a meeting up there in Denver. He called me up there and went in the 10th Circuit Federal Court. And by that time, they'd had a new U.S. attorney. His name was Greg Goldberg. And me and Harvey had a meeting with him. And he said, "Look, you're on some kind of a very strange, sensitive case. We're getting a lot of heat in the DOJ about this. I'm getting a lot of heat on your case from the U.S. attorney. I don't know what's going on here, and I don't want to know. You pick a charge, any charge, I don't care which one, and plead guilty to it." So I pointed to the paper. I didn't even know what I was pointing at, and it turned out to be dealing firearms without a license. It's a Class 4 felony. I mean, I had the biggest machine gun shop in the whole state. And I'd already turned all my licenses in to ATF. I had a perfect operational record, 0 violations. Everything was perfect. So I just was pleading guilty to anything to get these goons off my back. And so I made up my mind that if I could ever get away from these people, they gave me 3 years supervised release. They gave me 25 months in prison. I did all that. I was perfect. I had a perfect record, not one traffic ticket on my whole record going into this thing. They denied my bond, no bond. They violated every right I had. And so this was a deep state cover-up of the Mura Building bombing. The question is, why? Why? Why did they do it? And this is pretty shocking stuff, John. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm afraid I am.
Okay. Well, I got to go back through a little bit of background real quick. In the mid-'80s, Saddam Hussein was a paid CIA asset. He was in the Ba'ath Party running Iraq, and they got in a big war with Iran. Iran had a 10-to-1 infantry advantage. Donald Rumsfeld, our Secretary of State, went over there and gave him satellite intelligence and stuff. We were worried that they would overrun him. So we covertly armed him with the AIM strains of anthrax out of Fort Detrick, Maryland. These were a weaponized grade of anthrax that they have a small protein coat, a small spore size and a altered protein coat, so they're more easily absorbed and more deadly. So we covertly armed him with that in case they were overrun. Well, you fast forward to after the war was over, Saddam invaded Kuwait. And when he did, it pissed the Saudis off. They were afraid he was going to hit them, so they put pressure on the Bushes. And so the Bushes cooked up that Desert Storm thing, Desert Storm 1, which was January of 1991. Now, they had a problem. The American people did not know that we had armed him with biological weapons. So they had to keep it all hush-hush. Well, they didn't have time to get our troops ready to go over there because our standard anthrax vaccines took 6-month course. You take one injection for a month for every 6 months to build immunity. They didn't have time. They were worried that Saddam would use these weapons that were not supposed to be there on our own troops. Then they'd have 2 things to explain. So they cooked up this new vaccine it was a 1-month course, 1 shot. and they use squalene. It's an adjunct. It's never been done before. It's an autoimmune booster, kind of like the Therasol that's in the mercury-based vaccines for flu, or the aluminum adjuncts that are used in flu shots. So this stuff was untested, and they waived FDA approval, and they gave it to our troops going over there. The first lot went to Dover Air Force Base. In the book, I have all this detailed. I have dates, times, everything. I took 4.5 years to write this book. It's highly researched. Anyway, to make a long story short, John, our guys were getting these bad bum shots, and it was causing autoimmune disorders, which led to what we call the Gulf War syndrome. Now, when they got in theater over there in Iraq, the second problem occurred, and this was the use of depleted uranium munitions. They'd been tested at the Dugway Proving Grounds, but they'd never been actually used in combat. So the United States used approximately 200 tons of these munitions. Now, these were slightly radioactive. They were mainly used in the A-10 Warthog planes, the tank busters, and the 30-millimeter chain guns. I know pilots there that use those, and now they work for the Space Command here nearby for the CIA. However, they were also used in the M1A1 Sabot rounds in the tanks. And Timothy McVeigh had confirmed kills there. He won a Bronze Star. But anyway, John, these, make a long story short, they come out with a real high kinetic energy out of those tank barrels, 5,200 feet per second. They had enough kinetic energy to blow a 11-ton Soviet T-54 tank turret clean up in the air like a tumbleweed. Well, when these big gaseous explosions, real hot, they made new compounds, uranium dioxide. And these were of a particulate size of 4 microns. Now, our standard MOP gear, all the NBC gear and gas masks that our troops were issued, John, they only went down to 10 microns. So now our guys, on top of getting bad anthrax vaccines, they were breathing in this radioactive dust and crap, and it accumulates in the thyroid glands and in the testicles. They were coming home from the war, making love to their wives. This stuff was being transmitted through their semen into the ovaries of their wives, then from the ovaries to the children. And the Pentagon had this huge medical problem brewing. No, they'd never done it before. No one knew this was happening till our soldiers started getting sick years later. Okay? So the Pentagon was possibly on the hook for hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of future medical costs. You know, mother to son, son to daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. They didn't know how far this was going to go. So Senator Chris Shays, the Republican from Connecticut, he was on one of the Armed Services Committees. He called for Gulf War hearings, and they told the FBI, we want you to round up all the records of 480,000 of our troops so we can give our veterans some money and compensate them for all this sickness, just like the Vietnam vets you recall with the Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Yeah. And DuPont made that big settlement. So here we are in 1994 with Senator Shays ordering the FBI to get the records. So they went around gathering all these medical records, and guess where they were stored?
The Mura.
The Alfred P. Mura Building.
You got to be kidding me.
No, sir. When those records were when that building was detonated in 1995, those records were lost. And so on September 19th of 1996, okay, a few months later, Congress was still involved in the hearings for the Gulf War syndrome. And during that hearing, I have the actual physical, the copies of that hearing in the appendix of this book. The Department of Defense admitted at the hearings that over 400,000 Gulf War syndrome records had, quote, disappeared. And so without those records to prove all these ailments, all the medical crap that was going on, the Pentagon basically was off the hook for hundreds and hundreds of billions, maybe even trillions in long-term medical costs. Now, the second reason that Mura Building was bombed was the ops that we were in. I was over there in Arkansas a lot, going back and forth from Tulsa. My job was to drive truckloads of ordnance. We had some associates who were in the Arkansas National Guard, and they worked in the Armory, and then supply sergeants. And back then, things weren't on computer. They had, paper ledgers, and you can change a 10, and erase a 0 and make it down 1 pretty easy back then. And so they were taking loads of ordnance out of there and giving it to the CIA to arm the Contras. And so my job was driving things back and forth. And a friend had a farm there, and they'd steal the ordnance out of there and hide it at the farm south of Little Rock. We'd cool it off for a while, then we'd bring it over to a buddy's house between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We'd let it cool off there till we got our orders. My job was to drive this stuff back over to the main airport where it was transferred to Nicaragua. And so that's a whole nother story there. But anyway, all these records, all these operations were going on, and it brought the ire of the domestic law enforcement. The DEA, the IRS, the ABI, which is the Arkansas Bureau of Investigation, they all began investigating all this stuff in MENA. Bill Clinton was getting 10% of the Black Ops money for running front for the CIA by using his position as governor. And I was told, I didn't see this myself, I was told by some of the higher up operators that the Operation Since Our Rose was bringing $100 million worth of cocaine a month into Arkansas, where it was distributed. And I know all of it. That's a whole other thing. But Clinton got 10% of the Black Ops money, which was $10 million a month. They washed the money through the Whitewater scandal, through the Worthington Bank in Atlanta, the BCCI Bank, the Bank of Commerce and Credit International out in the Caymans. And that's some of the money they used, to move up to the White House. But anyway, all those records of the investigations of the Clinton's crimes, the Whitewater, all that stuff, guess where that stuff was moved? Just before the Mura Building was blown up. Okay, the reason we know this is because an FBI agent in the Little Rock field office, he called Craig Roberts, who was a Tulsa police detective there where I lived in Tulsa, and told him, he said, they've moved all these records out of here, all this Clinton stuff. I mean, in August of 1994, Ken Starr was appointed the Whitewater prosecutor. July 26 of 94, the Whitewater investigations began. And then here in 1995, a few months later, they're all blown up. And so these records all disappeared right in the middle of these investigations and then Clinton's future impeachment. So Paul Craig Roberts, he wrote pieces and said that, this occurred. Now, we don't have any actual eyes-on intelligence. I mean, I didn't stand there in the Mura Building and watch these records and read them all and make sure they were in there. These are just things we were told. So these two things point directly to cover up by the shadow government. And the beneficiaries of that bombing were the Pentagon. And so they didn't have lose a lot of money for medical costs, and then the Clintons not being impeached or otherwise criminally convicted. So
let me ask you something. Now hold your place, because I don't want you to forget anything, right? I don't want to get you off track. But I want to catch up on a potential misunderstanding that I had. Did you add any? Were you referencing Larry Nichols earlier in our chat, or was it always Terry Nichols?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was Terry Nichols. No, Larry Nichols is the guy in Conway, Arkansas. Now, I meant T with a T, Terry Nichols. He was McVeigh's platoon. Yeah, I'm glad you caught that, because I get to talking so fast. I said Larry, I meant Terry.
Okay,
Terry
well, I heard that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, he was. I'm glad you caught that, John. Thank you for helping me. I'm
no worries.
Trying to cover a lot of stuff over 2 or 3 decades in a short time, and
yeah, it kind of takes a doing.
I hope I'm doing a good job. My brain gets fried. Yeah, Terry was McVeigh's platoon commander over there in Desert Storm, and they were the Apaches, with a standard Ryder truck, ammonium nitrate thing. I think that was about 9:03 a.m. on April 19th of 95.
You've blown up a lot of stuff, I take it, or seen stuff blown up.
Yes, I have. I'm highly trained in EOD, and we were talking on the Jeff Rench show last night about all this, and he was asking questions about the actual mechanics of explosives and how they work. And I could talk for 2 hours. I mean, I got degrees in mathematics and physics, and we were talking about tamp charges and spherical wave divergence, and yeah, I know a lot of stuff about that. So any questions you got? That right there, John, is the basic story in this book. It's 360 pages. It's called Choosing the Light, Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing. And I've waited 22 years to tell this story. I made up my mind when I was in solitary confinement, and when I finally got out of all that one day, if the Clintons ever got out of office, I had to wait till Bill was out of office, and I had to wait till Hillary was out of the State Department office, and I finally would come forward at some point with a story. I know guys, John, directly at Benghazi that night when the firefight went off, they told me right in my ear exactly what happened. They were in the firefight for 7 hours. They told me the whole thing. That's in the book. The assassination of Barry Sadler, that's in the book. The thing with the Branch Davidian compound is really amazing of what really happened there. That's in the book. I got all this stuff one step away, like Ron Cole. He was right there with Koresh, one step away. And then I tell my stories, the stuff that I saw actually myself. So if there's any questions you got, I'm here. I know this is a lot to dump. We have been betrayed. The Bushes and the Clintons are satanic evil. I'll just say that right out there. I know that for a fact. I have a lot of proof in this book. There's some things in the Black Ops world, John, that there is no proof of, because the operations were highly sanitized. And that's, Philip Marshall. They sanitized they found his daughter and his son, and then it's all cleaned up and sanitized, and we're so tired of all these cover-ups. Yeah, a lot of black Suburbans were around his place after that murder. I understand that multiple murders. Let me ask you this. I'm thinking that now, I'm asking this from the standpoint of a person who has no idea what he's talking about. So I'm going to allege, which is to declare without proof, that was not potassium nitrate in a Ryder truck that destroyed the Mura Building. Yes or no? Oh, no. It was ammonium nitrate is what they called it. And when you mix it with diesel fuel, it does make an explosive compound. However, the shock wave is a compression wave. It's an example of a longitudinal wave. They call it in physics. It's where the direction of energy of propagation of the wave is the same as the motion of the wave. So these people claim that they saw det cord and everything else. They were correct. They did see det cord. Yeah. Here's what actually happened. They asked me how I would have bombed that building had I taken that job. And when you blow up a civilian building like that in America, there's going to be, the aftermath is there's going to be a lot of media, a lot of people. There's no way you can hide it. So if you're going to run a black op, how are you going to hide it? Well, you have to have a cover for it. And the cover story was that McVeigh and Nichols were going to come up there with the ammonium nitrate and diesel. And there's no way, absolutely no way you can blow up a building like that with a truck like that. That's 100% bullshit. You have to have C4 with a detonation rate of at least 2,600 feet per second. That's 92% RDX and 8% plastic filler. Or you can use composition B and a combination of nanothermite, which is a very hot burning military-grade explosive, which melts and cuts with the C4 at the same time. They still use an RDX, really? Yeah. That's one of the basic compounds in a lot of the explosives. Okay. They've got other stuff now, but what I would have done in that Mura Building was there was 3 bombs in there, and only one of them went off. And what that was going to do was McVeigh was going to detonate, and then they were going to detonate the ones that would be pre-wired inside. And so as the whole thing went down and blew everything up, then of course the federal cover story would be just the lone bomber and the Ryder truck. But what happened was 2 of those bombs didn't explode. And on that morning, there was an Oklahoma City police officer named Randy Yeeke. He was down on Northwest 5th Street, downtown Oklahoma City, giving a traffic ticket to a guy. And he'd been in the MP in the military before. And that building blew up down the street. So he just left his car and went running. He was the very first responder of anybody there. He rescued 4 people who were bleeding profusely from shattered glass. Then he went to the daycare center to try to find some children. And the Oklahoma City Police Department gave him the meritorious award, the Valor Award for helping the people. And Randy Yeeke himself saw that unexploded bomb. Now, the feds had to go in there and get those bombs out somehow before and hide everything. Then they had another team that came in and got the records out, because all those anthrax records and the Clintons records, since only one bomb went off, not all the records were destroyed. So now they had to cover up 2 things. So Randy Yeeke tried to form his own investigation. He didn't believe the cover story. They put that bomb in the daycare center because the PSYOPs part of that bombing was to get civilian casualties of children. That way it would draw heavily on the emotions of the indigenous population in the area, which happened to be the Americans.
Oh, yeah.
So Randy Yeeke had 9 boxes of files after a year or 2 of investigating, talking to witnesses. Meanwhile, there's a massive cover-up in the Oklahoma City Police Department and the feds. The reason why the Oklahoma City Police Department cooperated with the federal investigation cover-up was because the feds had infiltrated the OKC Police Department. They were drug dealing. There's a lot of drug dealers in there, and they basically used it as blackmail and told them, look, if y'all don't help us cover this bombing up, we're going to expose and prosecute all these dirty cops. So the fix was in, the cover-up was on. Randy Yeeke was a good patriot like me, trying to tell the truth, and he had 9 boxes of files. Make a long story short, he got spooked. He went to move them up to a storeroom in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. Later on, his body was found. It was away from his patrol car, and it was found by Canadian County Deputy Sheriff Mike Ramsey. The patrol car was covered with blood. This was on May the 8th of 1996. His body was found out in the field. He'd been beaten, cut, hundreds of cuts, broken bones, contusions, and 1 shot to the back of the head. Now, Randy Yeeke wasn't stupid. He was a cop, plus he'd been in the military. So he made 2 other copies of these 9 boxes of files. One of them went to Dr. Don Chumley, which was his friend. And Chumley had a little, I think it was a Cessna 122 single engine. And he had got spooked as well. And on the same exact day that Yeeke went to hide all those records, Chumley took off in his plane with a copy of them to go take them off to hide them. And his plane crashed the same day they found Yeeke's body. So his wife, Tanya Yeeke, got the call from the Oklahoma City Police Department saying, your husband's been found dead. And they had put those 3rd copies of the records down at a bank building in a safety deposit box. So she went down to get them. And when she got there, the girl at the desk told her the FBI was just here 30 minutes ago. They broke into your safety deposit box. They confiscated all of those boxes under national security and warned us not to talk about it or we would be prosecuted. So Tanya Yeeke was scared. She got back home. There was writings on, they broke in her house. They wrote stuff on the wall. I've got the exact words in the book. It's like, shut up or you're next or something.
Wow.
A couple of weeks went by and then her brake failed on her truck. So all this is detailed and the cover up was massive, just massive.
Cody, you were talking about the Middle Eastern guys that had the plans of the building.
Right.
Very early on, when the first reports came in about a bombing having occurred up there in Oklahoma City, I heard the word Iraqi. Did you hear the name Iraqi?
Yes. When Timothy, okay, on April, I got to slow down. I'm sweating. My palms are sweating here, John. Okay. On April 19th of 1995 at about 9:03 a.m., that building was detonated. Now, standard investigative, there was a lot of investigative things there. The FBI took it all over, but McVeigh, they deposed a lot of the witnesses, and they saw McVeigh in a getaway car. There were other witnesses who actually saw an Iraqi-looking man in the Ryder truck with him, but that didn't fit the the lone bomber thing. Now, the FBI, when it first came out, and they were looking for McVeigh, they had the John Doe 2, and they had those composite sketches. And that John Doe 2 guy, all the witnesses that had been there at the Mura Building that were still alive, they all said that guy in the truck was an Iraqi. And so when Gagan told me this story years later when we were both inside federal prison, he said those guys were Iraqis. He said, I had a whole van load of C4, and I didn't know, you don't ever know in those ops where you're going. You're just told, okay, go from point A, point B, here's the codes, and then you turn it over to whoever. And when he saw that they were Middle Eastern, he said they were Iraqis. They were Middle Eastern guys. And he knew something really weird was up. That was 3 days before the Mura Building blew up. That was like April 16th of 1995. So we think that Gagan delivered the C4 to Iraqis. They were probably foreign nationals brought in here in a black op. Their job was to run the parallel op of planting the bombs in the Mura Building. Then the other parallel op was Timothy McVeigh in the Ryder truck for cover. Neither one of the participants in these parallel ops knew what the other one were doing. That's a classic umbrella op, we call it, in the black ops field, where there's an umbrella op and the higher ups know what's going on, but there's multiple operations running parallel to each other that each of the individual participants in those operations do not know about each other. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So that's how you bomb that building, and then that's how you cover it up to the civilians. Now, what happened was 2 of the bombs didn't go off. They had to remove all those records and destroy them some other way. Then they had to cover up the 2 bombs that didn't go off, and then they had to cover up all of the stuff in the court. They ramrodded McVeigh when he was in Desert Storm to get his anthrax shots and everything to go over there. A lot of people don't know this. This is stuff in the book. He was also given a microchip injection without his knowledge. This is part of a covert plan to monitor field assets in real-time war situations. It was staged through the Lockheed Martin satellites. They were called the B satellites. They're battle engagement area simulator trackers. Their job was to sit up in space and follow these microchips that were covertly put in soldiers in real-time battlefield conditions like sand, wind, smoke, oil fires, and so forth. When McVeigh got back from Desert Storm, he started getting sores in his butt, and the protein coats on these things were being tested, and the autoimmune system rejected. So he cut it out, and he got mad when he discovered that he was used as a guinea pig. And so he went to Special Forces at Fort Benning and said, I want to join the Special Forces. And so there's about 100 guys or so in that unit. And after they did the psych profile test, the standard test, McVeigh was singled out by the CIA. 10 of them were pulled out of that Special Forces group and covertly had a meeting with CIA. And they told him, we want you to be CIA agents or assets in doing bombings, moving drugs, and assassinations. What we want you to do is use the front of the Special Forces as your cover. Okay? So McVeigh said, no, I'm a patriot. I don't want to bomb buildings, and I don't want to kill, and I want to do all this stuff. So he quit. And then he went up to Calspan in Buffalo, New York, which is a security job he had. And Calspan, John, when you start researching that place, they were in the Redstone program with the Air Force. They were in electronic intelligence, electronic counterintelligence, high-level RFID tracking, airborne instruments, technologies, radar systems, microchips, all kinds of heavy stuff. And that's where we think he was approached by undercover assets like they approached me and offered the job to bomb the Mura Building, because he had he was getting pissed at what they'd done to him, and he had also been down at Waco, and that whole story's in the book about what really happened at Waco. That's an amazing story down there. So anyway, all this is in the book, and it's the real stuff. I mean, I got it, like, if I wasn't there and saw it with my own eyes, I heard it directly from people who were there, like Ron Cole or any number of other, Duke Flagley or any of these other guys. So all this book's highly detailed, and this is the truth as best as I could find. And so this is a hell of a story, and I'm talking too fast, but I can elaborate in all this. I can talk for hours and go into specifics. It's just amazing.
Cody, I have done probably 99.999% of all of the business that I have done with various people over a telephone. And I've gotten to where I can read people over a phone pretty well. And I'm picking up a little stress in your voice. In fact, quite a bit. So, I mean, as long as we've gone this far, I should have told you this at the beginning of the program, but I presumed, which is not a good thing to do, that you would know this already. But you are completely at liberty to talk about anything you want at whatever depth you want to go, because it's pretty much now or never. We see exactly how controlled the media is. We see this whole thing with Special Counsel Mueller and what he's doing. I mean, he's even got Trump bashers and haters on his own staff, so he let one of those go. Okay, fine. We know that General Flynn's career and pretty much his life has been, I'm not going to say it's been ruined, but it's taken one hell of a hit. Mr. Trump even said, destroyed his life. Those were the words that he used, over something that amounts to far less of an infraction than anything that bag of pus Hillary Clinton ever did. We know that this lion, Bravo India Tango Charlie Hotel, we know that she had, we know she's a liar, and we know that Bill Clinton is a perv of the highest order. There have been rumors that she is too. And, I'm over it. We're at the give me liberty or give me death stage again. It's almost as though, really, do we really want to be ruled by these disgusting excuses for human beings? I mean, what are we supposed to make of this as far as a future for this country is concerned? Are we just going to just allow ourselves to be dragged down to the same depths that these scummy fish swim in, and we're just stuck there? That's our life now. That's our world. That's our country. To me, well, I dare not say more, but generally, your options for dealing with people like this are usually pretty limited. However, because we have the internet, and if the Lord God, praise him in the name of Jesus, is willing, perhaps just exposing these people will be enough. The left wing were almost, statistically, and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but it looks like the country is split exactly down the middle, which makes me want to ask people, what is wrong with you? I mean, why would you continue to support a candidate like Clinton, knowing what you do about that person? Well, we could say the same thing about George Bush. Yes, you could. But George Bush is gone. And George H.W. Bush is an old man, over 90, oldest living president. There's an irony there, So maybe I should just ask you this. What do we hope will come from your book and from these interviews that you're doing? I mean, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be on Fox News with this. You got to go. You know what I'm saying? So, what are we hoping for? Is it enough just to get the truth out? And what about it? All the risks that you've taken and others have taken to get the truth out. If the populace just sits there on its sorry backside and does nothing, then what was it all for?
Well, that's a really good question. And what it's for is, I'm speaking for Philip Marshall, and I'm speaking for Michael Hastings, and I'm speaking for Seth Rich and Vince Foster and all the people that were murdered by the Clinton crime machine. Because the day we see truth and do not speak is the day we begin to die. And Martin Luther King said that a long time ago, before they killed him too. And this shadow government here has been operating in our country. John, I was in Dallas the day Kennedy was shot. I was a second grader at Janie Stark Elementary School in Farmers Branch, Texas. And then when I was a junior in high school, we took a field trip to the Texas Book Depository. And we stood there. There was a security guard, an old World War II guy. And the class looked there, and they had it behind these ropes. And they all left. And I said, my dad was at Pearl Harbor. And I said, I've been shooting guns since I was 7 years old. Can I stand where Oswald stood? And he said, come on, son. And he let me stand there. And I looked out the sixth floor of the Texas Book Depository, and I saw that big live oak tree. And I realized that there could never be a shot like that made, that whole thing was bullshit. And that's when I started really investigating things. And then I turned into what I was doing. But to answer your question, John, what I'm doing with this book and why I'm coming out with this story is it's a spiritual thing for me. My mission basically is to put myself out in public with a horrendous story like this. This story is true. It's all true. And it was repressed heavily, and I was threatened with death. But my job, John, is to stand out here. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I've got my address in this house I've owned 26 years. I'm sitting right here right now. I want people to know out there that there is someone who can stand up to the vast power of the shadow government and the assassination teams of Bill and Hillary Clinton and all this illegal dirt, that there's someone who will stand up and face them and look at them. Because I want to call all the other people in our military, our firefighters, all those guys that are suffering from breathing that asbestos up there at 9/11. I want everybody who knows anything about these covert ops to bring it out in the open now. That's why I called this book Choosing the Light. I'd walked with the dark ones. We did a lot of dirty stuff. Like I said, my girlfriend that was here last night, I had dinner with Pablo Escobar himself. We were operating and seeing a lot of dirt. Now I'm of the light. And what I'm doing, John, is just, that's my job, is to say it's time to say enough is enough. And hopefully if I stand up and risk my life like this, that it will stir the spirit of Americans. It will stir our spirit that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, they had to face the King of England, the tyrant. And we're under a system now that's horrible. We're losing our country. We're losing our Constitution. Criminals like the Clintons are ruining everything. And I'm ready to stand up. It's time to rally around the truth if that's what you want. If you want a new world order police state with your children being microchipped like McVeigh was in Desert Storm, if you want draconian laws and all your guns taken away and all that, then you continue on this course. We all have to stand up now. We all have to work together. You're part of it, John. There's other, Alex Jones, all the guys, Ole, Damagard, all the truth movement guys. It's time for us to get this out and stand up. And I'm scared. Are you crazy? I saw what the CIA did. I spent half my life wearing a black ski mask and plastic gloves. I've watched what they do in the field. I'm sitting here sweating with my palms. My stomach's turning, and I'm afraid. But I tell you what, John, and I got to say this with all my heart. The fear that's inside of me is not nearly as important as my love for freedom and my love for this country and my love for the good men and women and veterans who have sacrificed so much, like my dad did when my stepdad at Pearl Harbor. And so it's time for me to just stand up. This has been eating at me for years. In the empty moments, it eats at me, John, and I wanted it out. It's like a cancer in my soul. And in the back part of this book, the last quote we have at the very last page, it says, "Fear of death is a strong enforcer of silence, but guilt, like heart disease, can be a silent killer for the guilty." So I'm standing up right now and I'm speaking for all the people like Philip Marshall, all the good people that were tricked and lied to and given bad vaccines, and our Agent Orange veterans who were duped and tricked with that DuPont dioxin crap. It's time for us all to stand up, and that's what I'm doing. if anyone wants to join, we pray. We have prayer groups for Donald Trump. I got a guy in Florida, Minnesota, all around the country. There's ministers that were with us down in Nicaragua. They're praying. We have prayer groups. We're praying that we can rid our country of this corruption, and that we can stand up against the bankers. Why should they get bailed out in 2008 and all of us suffer? I know guys can't even make their house payments. I see groceries going up, John, and we're all getting screwed while they all get rich.
It's true. You know, my dad was at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Anniversary's coming up day after tomorrow on the USS Maryland.
Nice. Hey, we went to the Veterans Rally up here in Cripple Creek, Colorado here this summer. And, John, you know who was there was Lieutenant Commander James Downing. He was 103 years old. He's the second oldest Pearl Harbor survivor. And I've got a friend of mine that was shot up in the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam in the USS Warden. He's highly disabled. He got crushed and everything. But I went to James Downing, and I bought 2 of his brand new books about Pearl Harbor. He was on the USS West Virginia during the attack. And I got him to hand autograph those books. He could barely sign them. And then I took one to one of our veterans here because he was too disabled to go to the rally. But I had him sign it, USS Warden, you know, and thank you for your service. And when I handed it to him, he cried. Here was the second oldest Pearl Harbor survivor that, handing this guy, I gave him a book. So, my dad was in the 25th Infantry Division. Took his basic down at Fort Hood in May of 37. And then the Pacific Command sent him over to Schofield Barracks, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So he was there. Then he went to Guadalcanal in November. I think it was November 42. They were over there.
Man, 42. That was a rough year. Yeah. 42 and 3 were rough.
Oh, yeah. And then when he got out after 8 years in the Army, he came back and was a Missouri Highway Patrolman for 32 years. And when he died, we had this book here I'm looking at a picture of him. It's him with these Pearl Harbor stuff and the American flag. This book's dedicated to all our veterans. And when he died in 2003, May 26th, we had his funeral, and the national president of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association was there. We had a whole section of the church cordoned off. And the Pearl Harbor guys were the first ones. The governor's office from the state of Missouri was there. He walked up and said something over the open casket. And I was sitting on the very front row with my mom and the family. And he walked over to me, and he stuck his hand out. And he said, "I'm sorry, son." And I didn't like people to see me crying. So I got up and went outside. And there's a big church, great big. And there was a canopy, and I walked out, and there was a truck blocking the way with the motor running. And I thought, what the hell? So I walked over there. There was an old man slumped over the passenger dashboard, and I tapped on the window, and his ear was gone. His head was all white with scar tissue, no hair. This guy looked like death warmed over, and he sat up, rolled the window down. He had an oxygen tube on. And I said, "Sir, what are you doing here? Are you sick? There's a funeral here, and these guys are fixing to come out. You're blocking the way." And he looked at me, and he said, "Those goddamn doctors at the VA." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "They told me I was too sick to come here today, and I can't walk. But my brother snuck me out, and they got me here, and I got as close as I could to one of my brothers."
Man, is that something?
And after 60 years, John, that bond, I could feel it from this guy. And I mean, he'd been burned up, evidently. And so I took his hand, and it was shaking. And I just cried. We both sat there and cried. I never saw that guy since. I don't know his name. But I had all this pent-up stuff inside of me, and I bawled like a baby. And then when I got home, I wrote this poem. It's called "We Loved Our Country," and we read it on at Veterans Day. I read it at the VFW Post 11411 here. And if you can give me just a few minutes, I would like to read this for all our veterans out there.
It'll be fantastic.
Okay. I'm going to try to do it without crying. but here we go. They had a 21 gun salute when they buried my dad, and they gave my mom the flag, and this old Pearl Harbor guy, he got down on his hands and knees. They had the chrome helmets, color guard, and he picked up all the brass and he carried it over to me and handed it to me. And I said, "What's this, sir?" And he pointed to all the grandkids and kids running around. He said, "Son, Jimmy told you those stories about Pearl Harbor?" And I said, "Yes, sir, he did." He said, "You give this brass to these kids when they get older, and you tell him what these men did for our country, because they're too young to know." And so I cried a lot, and I wrote this poem. It's called "We Loved Our Country." As our veterans who have gone before us have carried burdens for too long, down deep inside their souls, we must stand up with them, united as one people. Afraid we are, for we know war's path, which many before us have trod. Courage under fire, we pray, comes upon us from mighty angels, bringing light into our hearts to face death once more. If we survive, us who ride the storm, a healing we will need after the years go by telling our truth, a soldier's bond, seeking someone to hear, to really care. We loved our country, sacrifices of good men before us made. God bless our country, our mother's soul, for whom we fought, bled, and paid. Memories of my brothers falling, blind luck, the only reason I'm still alive. You won't be forgotten in the silence of our hearts, although most civilians won't ever hear your cries. Tears for my men, God grant them peace. My soul can't stand much more. Only angels' love may one day bring us healing from the battle's haunting roar.
Yeah.
So I wrote that, and that's the dedication to this book here. It's dedicated to all the firefighters and veterans and all the people. And so you ask the question, why this? Why do this? It's to stand up for the truth and the light. I'm 61 years old and 100% disabled. If they want to come kill me, I went to my doctor before I did all this, John, and I told him, I've had his doctor 26 years. I said, I'm coming out with this Oklahoma City book. I'm going to do radio interviews. And if something happens to me, I want you to know I'm not taking any drugs except what you give me. I'm not going to commit suicide. The Clintons' favorite thing, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm not going to jump off a cliff. I'm not going to have a strange car wreck, or if they find little puncture needles and stuff on me. I want everyone to know that it's the shadow government that murdered me. And they did it to Philip Marshall. I firmly believe that. And why do we American citizens have to put up with these people killing our own people? Why?
Here's the thing. I've said this many times, Cody. This is not the 700 Club. This is not there's anything wrong with the 700 Club. It's just that that's not what Caravan to Midnight is. However, as time has gone by, it's become more and more obvious that this is a ministry of sorts, irrespective of whether or not I intended it to be that. But it's like Sir Francis Bacon said, a little philosophy, a dabbling in philosophy inclines a man to atheism. But a depth in philosophy brings a man back around to religion. Okay, fine. He didn't say Christianity specifically, but Thomas Troward did. He said there are a lot of religions in the world. Some of them benefit their people, but you'll do no better. You'll do no better than Jesus Christ, and it's true. And that's, I mean, I live it. You know, it doesn't mean that suddenly because we're believers, we stop sinning and we wear frumpy clothes and we never have any fun and we never say a crossword. We never, you know, that's not part of it. That's just stupid propaganda that's put out by people who don't like Christians for some reason. The thing is, though, the devil knows that every man and woman is made in the image of God. And he hates us, all of us, including the ones that do his bidding. He hates them.
Yes, he does.
And when you talk about the deep state and all these young men and some young women too, their lives lost or ruined through grievous wounding, don't you have to wonder if there really is a satanic influence in this government? And I believe that there is.
There is, absolutely.
Well, that means that the government actually hates us. Isn't it obvious that the government hates us or certain elements of it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. They do. They hate freedom. They hate people living, with liberty and justice. They that's against every fiber of their being.
Yep.
And what this is, John, by me standing up like this is a resurgence of Jesus Christ's Spirit. What I'm saying is the prayer groups that we know, a lot of these guys are Vietnam veterans and Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, and they saw the battles and stuff. And what is going on right now is this big wave of light, John. There's people from all over. I did an interview in the Netherlands this morning. We did another one in Ireland the day before. We had one in Spain with Oli Damagard. His website is lightonconspiracies.com. That's a really good website.
We have it on all the time.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, there's a wave. It's going on not just here in America. There's a lot of people who are getting beat down by their governments. They're tired of the New World Order thing. They're tired of the bankers. They're tired of all these constant wars. And this is a spiritual battle we're in right now between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. Okay, so everyone out there, you pick which, all the time for fence riding is coming to an end. You pick which side you're on. I was on the dark. I admit that. I'm no angel back then. We did a lot of dirty stuff. But when I died in the hospital, I had a spiritual awakening. I had a near-death experience. And my guardian angel, Aria, she was there with me. When I died, I looked down at my body, and she said, do you want to go back? If you do, to do the great light work, I'll come with you. And this is the truth, I swear to God. And I'm here now as working in the light. We do free healings on veterans. We don't charge them nothing. We work on PTSD and all that for them. And so this is a battle for America's soul. It's a battle for mankind's soul. You can pick the light or the dark, and Jesus Christ is making a wave of light, and people everywhere are feeling this stirring that's going on. And it's time for us to gather together in the light as warriors of light. The Archangel Michael threw Satan out of heaven. So that's what they say. And so the warrior angels, it's time for us to rise up and stand for the light and stand for truth and demand goodness from our government and demand culpability and demand that justice come. I don't want to see no more Philip Marshalls and his dog and his son and all of them found dead, and they say it's a suicide, John?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, and I'm sick of it. How much is enough?
And nobody heard anything. In that neighborhood he was living in, they were packed in pretty close there. And what got the, was his daughter the youngest of the two kids, or was it the boy? I think it was the daughter, was like 14.
Yeah, I think it was the daughter too. Yeah.
Yeah. Killed him.
And then the dog, what, I mean, oh man.
That was the sender.
I heard that and it just really lit me off.
I think that's a hitman's message. Nobody shoots his own dog. No.
So anyway, how many times are the Clintons? There's been, 121, 130 people that have all, committed suicide. And did you hear about the Haiti guy? The Clinton Foundation went down there after that earthquake. And then he was in Haiti, one of the ambassadors or aides or something. And he was going to come up to Miami here recently, like a couple of months ago, and testify to a grand jury. And then he flies all the way from Haiti, goes to Miami to go to court the next day, all to check in his hospital and shoot himself in the head. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, sure it does. Wow.
So what I'm saying is I'm willing to step up, and by doing that, other people who are out there that were like me and were black operators and did things and kept their mouth shut all these years, it's time now to get this stuff out, expose these criminals, and fix our country. Because if we don't, what are we going to hand down to our children, John? What kind of place are we going to give them?
Do you know what kind of place we're going to give them?
Yes, sir. FEMA camps and microchips and
one twitch and you're in hell.
You bet, buddy. But I want to thank you, John, for all the work you've done all these years. We used to listen to you on Coast to Coast, and I turn it on, they'd say, well, Nap's on there, and we turn it off. Anyone that was on there, we turn it off except for you. And then when it said John's on, we'd go get a cup of Joe and sit down. And I kept listening to you, and I think, oh, they're trying to rein him in. He wants to say stuff, but, they're not letting him. And so I'm so glad you got your own deal now where we can talk like this.
Me too. I wouldn't have it any other way. And really, it was a delight to go to work for Coast. It really was. But that was a great thing that happened. And a second great thing that happened was being fired from Coast. So sometimes the best job is the one you get fired from or the one you don't take. But I'll tell you, it's just, well, thank you for saying that. That's very kind of you. I've often wondered, what the hell are you doing? And then the next moment it's that I'm doing what I think I was supposed to do the whole time. It just wasn't time for me to do it yet. And now it is, because if we don't get this thing under control pretty soon, I mean, this isn't just some idle, repetition of something that many of us have thought for a long time. I'm serious about this, folks. If we don't get this thing under control pretty soon, they want to bring a duly elected president down. He was duly elected by the people. Nobody saw any votes flip from Hillary to Trump. Nobody saw even so much as one vote for Hillary flip to Trump.
That's right.
The Democrats cannot win anything. Forget about the Bushes. And there's been some other ones in there, but really and George W. He's just the kid. He just did what was already set up. It's his dad and his grandfather that are the problems, and we know this. We've heard allegations over the years about sexual misconduct from regarding George H.W. Bush and how creepy Joe Biden is. Of course, he's a Democrat; he's not a Republican. But now we got to get rid of Roy Moore. No, actually, we don't. Because number one, the timing of all these sexual harassment allegations, sexual misconduct accusations, they're coming a little bit late in the game. They had plenty of time to do something like this. Why now? Well, we know CIA controls the media. They do. They control so many things. And it's a rough crew. I'm pretty sure I second that.
I second and third it. I saw it firsthand, John. There's things in this book. People go, well, what about this and that? I said, I'm not going to talk about that. There's a lot of stuff underneath this that is extremely sensitive. But they are a rough crew. You're absolutely right.
Well, you really don't want to mess with them because they'll kill you. And there's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it. Nobody's going to be brought to justice over it. But, people have to ask themselves, I'm pretty sure there's some spooks watching this right now. Here's the thing. I'm just like you. As I was listening to Cody talk here, he's not some lily white guy. He just found the Lord. Same with me. I've said this before. I'm not like Saul, who became the Apostle Paul later. I don't think I was a chieftain among sinners, but I'm pretty damn sure I was a captain or a colonel or a major or something. But, when you don't know any better, you get pulled into things that once you know better, you would not think about getting into something like that. You think about, when you're young, look, martial arts masters put it best. Good judgment comes from experience, right? And experience comes from bad judgment. It's just how it is.
Yep.
I don't see any way around that. So look, right or wrong, whether you laugh at me, whether you mock me, whether you call names of every description, I'm asking the citizens this. How can you support these criminals? What is it inside you that makes you hate so much Jesus Christ, God Almighty, and doing things the right way. Meaning, don't do evil. Meaning, don't inflict pain or distress on any other human being on a mental, physical, or spiritual level. Just don't. And to the spooks, the security officers out there, I know damn well there are some good people out there. I know damn well that there are some people of conscience out there that know this is wrong.
Yes, that's right, John. You know, I'm sorry to interrupt, sir.
No, it's all right.
But I've had some people from the Inspector General's office of the CIA right here in my home. I have a lot of friends, and these people are some really good people. They are every bit the first class people. I mean, they're like the people you're talking about. And there's a lot of good cops and good FBI agents and good ATF agents. But there's also that crew of these dark, these satanic people like Hillary Clinton hiding behind the office of the State Department, or ATF agent Butler hiding behind the nation's top cop award, and all of this stuff. And what we have to do is weed out this darkness and keep the good people that are there. So just like you said, each of the spooks listening here, each of the guys like me that did all that stuff, look in your heart. John, if FEMA or something declares martial law here and their DHS, Department of Homeland Security's running around, they say, go in there and confiscate the guns. I'm asking all the police officers, I'm asking all the agents, look into your own hearts. You are under no obligation to obey an unconstitutional extrajudicial order like confiscating firearms. Turn your guns back around and tell these people, no, that's not right.
And always remember, there is such a thing as a war angel.
You bet.
They're not all little fairy dust sprinkling little happy angels like the ones that sit on top of the Christmas tree. That's just a decoration. There are war angels too. And when these
yes, there are. And they stand up for goodness, and they stand up for truth, and they stand up for light, just like the Archangel Michael threw Satan out of heaven. He stood up, and he was a warrior angel, and he said, no more. Stop this. This is the end of this. And that's what each of us has to do in our own hearts. This is a spiritual battle, pure and simple, for the soul of our country.
You can't run from your conscience indefinitely. Sooner or later,
no, sir,
it will catch up to you, and it'll destroy you. And you'll know what it means when someone says it will destroy you. Being destroyed. Have you seen this before? Of course you have. But you haven't seen yourself destroyed, but you will unless you turn from what you're doing. Be quiet, be stealthy, be discreet, but do what's right. And what's right is stopping this. This is not about people. This is not about flesh and blood. This is about the battle between good and evil. I wish I had better words. I wish there were some other words. I wish we had a new word for new. I wish we had another for good. Something that had a little more flash, sounded a little more stylish. But those are the words. And I'm talking to the security officers here. You're very good. You're brilliant people. Yes, you will do your duty. You will kill if it comes down to it. You will risk your life. And you probably have.
Well, John, at the very first of this book, I have two quotes. One's from Thomas Jefferson. It says, I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. And the second quote I have is from Luke 12:2-7. And it says, everything that is hidden will be found out, and every secret will be known. Whatever I say to you in the dark, you must tell in the light. Don't be afraid of people. They can kill you, but they cannot harm your soul.
So, Cody, what was
yes, sir.
What was You're absolutely right. I just want them to think about this. I mean, look how they didn't say a thing about John Kennedy's assassination on the 22nd of last month. Nobody said anything. Nobody even acknowledged 54 years since the assassination. Nobody said anything about it. And why is that? Because there are a few people left over from those days. Oh, why can't Mr. Trump release all the documents? Oh, it might jeopardize national security. Really? 54 years later, something in there is going to jeopardize national security. Like what? The confidence in the government that the reason John Kennedy Jr., John titled his magazine George, was because he was fingering the man he so truly believed was the mastermind behind his father's assassination, and that would be George H.W. Bush.
Yes, sir. The same criminal group moves from operation to operation to 9/11, to the Mura Building, to the shootings and the Las Vegas thing and the fires and all this stuff. And I was there that day, John, in Dallas. I got a lot of relatives around there, and I love Texas. I love the mountains up here. But I remember that day when, in November 22nd, 1963, I was there, and that, I believe, was the day the shadow government secret coup took over our country. Yeah. And then they murdered his brother Robert Sirhan. He was a CIA mind control guy, if I ever saw one. By the way, Dr. Jolene West, he was a CIA mind control specialist that worked with Sirhan. Guess where he showed up, John? After the bombing of the federal building and the Mura Building in Oklahoma City, he was sit down there as a special team to do psyops and watch the emotional response. Here's the same players showing up across the decades, the Bushes, Dr. Jolene West, the Clintons, these same crime cabals that have taken our country over secretly, basically.
And who do we think is funding and supporting and arranging and coordinating the actions of the so-called jihadis?
Well, I'll tell you this. I dropped this bombshell on one of the programs over there in Spain. Just real quickly, ISIS just appeared out of nowhere. And what was really happening was the Saudis had a big pipeline that they wanted to run across Syria and go out that port there by where the Russians have the naval base. And so Assad didn't want to play ball with them. So Saudis put pressure on the U.S. and all. So Hillary Clinton and Obama cooked up the scheme to have a proxy army. And our guys that were on the Air Force, the aircraft carriers, they were having bombing runs on them. And I talked to some of them. And their planes had a clear view of 100 or so Toyota trucks out in the desert, no canopy, no jungle canopy, clear visibility from the air. And when they got requested a green light to fire, they were told not to. They came back and they have to drop their ordnance in the ocean. That's standard landing procedure when you're on a military, when you come to an aircraft, so there won't be an explosion. Then they were made to sign national security oaths to shut up. And these pilots are going, why? We had a clear sight, we had a clear target, and now we can't do it because Obama ordered them all down. Then they took the Russian wing camera footage of the Russian fighters that were tearing up those convoys, and they brought that footage over to our news medias, and they used it to dupe the American people that we were destroying ISIS. The whole time we supported them. And that brings us to what happened at Benghazi, Libya. If you want to hear that story, it's short. A buddy of mine whispered straight in my ear. He was a CIA contractor there that night and had been ex-U.S. Marine Corps. And if you want, I can tell you that story.
And whatever detail you want, Cody, just let her rip.
Okay, well, here's what he told me at the Veterans Rally. He won't talk in public, and I will not use his name. He was in the Marines, and then like a lot of people do, I was making $20,000 a month. That was my base pay. We got paid cash. The jobs in Saudi Arabia, I was making $50,000 a month. But, the money's no good if you get shot. We're in high-risk things. So anyway, he got out of the Marines, and then he signed up with that Eric Prince Blackwater, and then they got to be contracting over there with the CIA. And so he's a CIA contract asset there that night in Benghazi. And he said he was sitting there when the firefight started, and they have radio comms, and he heard that they were all in trouble, and then he wanted to go, and he requested permission. He's ordered to stand down. This happened 3 times. He's told to stand down, stand down. Meanwhile, he's listening to all this horrible stuff on the radio. They had air assets ready to go, and Hillary Clinton had ordered it through the State Department to stand down. You know why? It's because when we went over and hit Gaddafi in Libya, now I have a friend who had dinner with Gaddafi in his presidential palace, okay? And I'm not mentioning his name, but Gaddafi had been buying large amounts of gold bullion and also weapons. He had his oil revenues. He was buying Soviet weapons to arm his army, and he had a lot of gold bullion put up. Well, Clinton and Obama knew about that. So when they threw Gaddafi out and Hillary made her little smart comment, we came, we saw, we killed, you know. She's a satanic witch. But anyway, I don't want to get emotional here. I just want to tell the truth as it was told to me. Obama and Clinton stole all that gold. And they were getting rich while our Navy SEALs were getting killed at that embassy. They ordered the stand down of all the assets, and my buddy was one of them, because they had taken the gold for themselves. They took all those weapons from Gaddafi when he got killed, and they were secretly funneling those weapons through the Benghazi embassy to arm ISIS covertly. They wanted to rid Assad and get him out of there so those pipelines could go through. And so there was massive weapons coming through that embassy, arming ISIS, and ISIS was tearing all around the desert out there, beheading people, blowing up the old Roman ruins, just being slaughters. They were slaughtering people. And the people over there in Syria and the insurgents said, you know, we're tired of this. We don't want all these weapons coming across here. That's why they hit that embassy. And that's when our ambassador was killed and the Navy SEALs were killed. Well, my friend, he was Semper Fi, you know, he was a Marine Corps guy, and he could only take so much. And he told me straight to my face, he says, I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, and I didn't give a damn about all my contracts with the CIA and Blackwater. My men, Navy SEALs, our brothers in arms were in trouble, and I didn't care what happened to me. And so he went, and he grabbed his guns, and he got in a firefight for 7 hours. He told me they blew the tops of the embassy off with Russian mortars to start with, and then they collapsed the perimeter and came in with small arms and grenades and stuff. And those Navy SEALs were outgunned. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton and them were ordering the stand down of all our assets and letting our guys get killed to protect their arms dealing, their covert war with ISIS. They substituted the wing camera footage from Russia strikes, put it in our media over here, and lied to our people and made us believe that we were actually attacking ISIS.
You know, what's funny is they, I don't know really how significant this is. It's maybe just a little bit of trivia, but a caravaner brought this to my attention, that Toyota has made a car called the ISIS for quite a long time. I don't know. I don't really know what that has to do with anything, but it just seems to maybe somehow be part of the little giggling behind our backs.
Exactly. Do you know why, John, that they do stuff like that?
Why?
It's because these New World Order satanic people, the Illuminati, all these evil people, they believe that if they do a terrorist attack or they kill a lot of people, that they'll get karma from it. But in their twisted thinking, if they leave clues to the next attack, then the way they look at it is, if the next attack occurs and people get killed, that they don't get any spiritual karma from it because they warned them. That's why they leave little clues like that, like ISIS. And that's a great point you made, because if you start digging around in this conspiracy stuff like Ole does Damagardo over there and Light on Conspiracies, you'll start finding little clues and little things like that. But you got to dig for it. And these people are satanic. They are evil. They are murderers. They don't care how many of our soldiers die. They don't care how many people suffer.
No, they don't. You know, it's interesting, and Ole was the one that brought it to my attention right here on this program. this company called crisis-solutions.com. So we look at this website, and sure enough, right down there at the bottom, it says Crisis Solutions. The clue is in the name. Well, what could the clue be? Oh, I get it. ISIS. And you know what? You can't see that website anymore because very, very shortly after this program was posted on the website, I guess it started getting around. They took it down. I mean, the whole look of the website is different, and it does not say that on there anymore. Not anymore. Crisis-solutions. The clue is in the name. It's gone. They scrubbed it right after.
Yes, sir.
Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's just happy timing, but I don't think so. There are a lot of people listening to this program that many of the people who listen to the program are they're patriots, or they're about to be, or they know they've been lied to and they're tired of it or something. But there are also some other people out there that think the way that you do and the way that I do and the way Oleg does and some others. So
I know, take a breath, brother, because it's so big. It's hard.
I know.
It's such a big thing. It's hard.
You know, after a while, you eventually, I mean, you just have to ask the question, what does the man on the street do? What is he supposed to do? I mean, what? I think the answer to that one is like, oh, do we all mobilize? Well, no. Do we all talk about it all the time? Maybe not. I don't know what is supposed to happen, except that if enough people know what the truth really is, something will change without us actually having to put our hands on some control and change it, actually, like we're going to redesign the society and everybody will act this way. It's like, no, once enough people know and they're convinced.
What it is, John, is a mass consciousness.
That's it.
And here's what the guy on the street, the little guy, I'm nothing big. I'm just a wore out old operator. But what each of us can do, John, I don't care who you are, how much money you got, I don't care if you're black and white, I don't care what religion you are, none of it matters. Here's what matters, is each and every day you hold the light in your heart. And if we can do that, and we can choose good, and we can speak the truth, and not lies, and not darkness, if each one of us every day can hold that, that will make a ripple of light. There will be a chain of light. And if 1,000 people do it, that's great. If 1,000,000 people do it, that's better. If 100 million people do it, we can sure change this country. So that's all I can say. People ask that same question, what can we do? We're barely making our electric bills and paying the groceries and stuff. How are we going to go up against the $100 million Clinton Foundation and all this stuff? Well, that's how we start. We start from the bottom up, and we speak the truth, and we hold the truth, and we hold the light each and every day, and we share that with our brothers and sisters out here, and we stand as one unity, Christ consciousness, with the unity of love and forgiveness. Not separation, not division, all this they try to divide us and all this racial stuff. Unity consciousness. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all one. Now, that sounds real idealistic and flowery until the first bullet goes by your head, okay? You're right. But it's an ideal that we can all, and it's something that each of us can do. The only thing we can control, John, really, is our own attitudes.
That's it. That's really true. Wow, man.
I'm so happy to talk to you. I think you've stirred a lot of people. You may not know it, John, but when you are on coast to coast, I know a lot of guys around here, they wouldn't listen to nobody but you. And they said, that John B., he's a good dude, man. You can tell his heart's good. He's a stand-up guy. And you've done the same thing. You brought light to people's hearts.
I get mad at people sometimes. I'm trying to speak blessings and not curses, you dumbass, that kind of thing. I'm trying not to do that.
Yeah.
But, because it's not like I haven't had a dumbass attack myself every once in a while. Of course I have. Sorry, it was a dumbass attack. I just sustained one. But you know, I don't like seeing people suffer. I don't like it. And I know that they are. But the thing is that, I mean, okay, on the quantum level, one mind can reach out to the entire world and, you know, sort of experience some empathy for the suffering of all these different people all over the world. Thing is that we're here right now in the United States. We were born Americans. I mean, there before the grace of God, we could have been Ethiopians or Sudanese or, you know, Yemenis or something. I mean, who knows? Russians, whatever. But the thing is, this thing is so corrupt right now. I mean, it's almost as though this government has become this tumor that's really its tentacles are spreading throughout the citizenry, and I'm just wondering how long it is. I'm wondering how long it is before people give up and decide that they can't beat this thing, that it's too big, it's too screwed up, it's too far down the road, and there's no stopping it. Well, it doesn't make any difference if we do feel that way. We have to stop it. There's no try or maybe it has to be done because there will be nothing left if we don't. Somebody, if we don't straighten up, something is going to smack us. And then after that,
John, I tell you what, that reminds me of Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book. He was at Auschwitz. His family was taken away from him and sent to the camp. And the only way he survived was his job was to take the dead bodies that had died the night before out, and they had a pile. They were waiting to be burned. They couldn't burn them all in the ovens. And they put snare wire, and they caught rats. And they couldn't eat the rats in front of the other inmates because they'd start a food riot. These people were being starved to death. So they took those rats in there, and they ate them at night where no one could see them. They ate cold rat meat. And later on, after Patton's Fourth Army and all of them liberated those camps, they asked him, why did you go to those extremes? That's absolutely crazy to do something like that. And he said, I wanted to see my wife and children. I love my family. And they said, well, what is the number one thing you learned out of surviving that horrific thing? And here's what he said. He said, the last of the human freedoms, when everything's been stripped away from you, your family, your job, your home, you're facing imminent starvation, imminent death at the gas chambers, and all you've got left is what is inside you. He said the last of the human freedoms is the choice not to give up hope, not to give up the light. And that reminds me of John 12:33, where they say the light will be among you a little longer. Continue on your way while you have the light, so that the darkness will not come upon you. For the one who walks in the dark does not know where he is going. Believe in the light while you still have it, so that you will be the people of the light. And that's what we have to find in America. We have to find that spirit again that our founding fathers had. And we have to stand up, each of us in our own small way, for the light. That's the backbone of our country. That's why, like men like your dad and my dad in World War II, they stood for that. They stood against the darkness of Adolf Hitler. They stood for the light. And America was the light, but now it's been corrupted from the inside. And so we have to fix it. And if we don't, we're going down.
That's how I see it. And who will be the ones to take us down? Who will it be? Chinese?
So anyway, this is a big thing, and this is the Mura Building. This is why I wrote this book at this time. I sat on this for a long time. I bit my lip. I watched Hillary Clinton lie on TV. I watched that sniveling, whining Bill Clinton. I am not going to say over there what I'd like to do to him if I ever got him alone somewhere. But I sat in prison for 2.5 years for something I did not do. And I was punished because I was a patriot of the United States. I was punished because I refused $1 million in cash to blow up that building in Oklahoma City.
And so what actually happened? What actually happened that resulted in your going into prison?
I talked on April 22nd, 1999. I was at Blake Butler's house in undercover Operation Stingray, DEA, ATF Operation Stingray, and I talked about all this Clinton stuff like we're talking, and told them about CIA ops, and they buried the tapes and planted me with evidence. And here's what happened. Do you know what a Steyr AUG is, John?
I sure do.
Okay, a lot of people don't, so I'll give a background. Over in Austria, the Austrian military has a weapon. Here in America, our main battle weapon's an M16 select fire. In Russia, it's an AK-47. In Austria, it's a Steyr AUG. It has an internal select switch, 223 caliber bullpup design. Well, I had some of those. They made some civilian copies that were semi-automatic to be exported into the United States. And in my gun shop, I had a number of them. We also had several machine gun trigger packs, which are legal as long as they're not installed. If you install them, you have to fill out all the federal class 3 forms and get a $200 tax stamp and so forth. So I was at Agent Butler's, and he said, "Do you have that Steyr AUG for sale?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What about those machine gun packs?" I said, "They're here." He said, "Well, why don't you put them together and we'll make one?" And I said, "No." I said, "That's a felony, and I won't do it." He said, "Well, I'll buy it anyway." So he took it to the ATF office. They converted it to an illegal machine gun, charged me with it, then went back to the surveillance tapes and cut out all those parts where I said, "No, that's a felony. I won't do it."
You're talking about those trigger packs? Those drop-in trigger packs?
Pardon me?
Those drop-in trigger packs?
Right.
I got you.
And so I wouldn't put them in there because that's a felony. And I said real loud, I said, "No, that's a felony." Well, the ATF went and converted it, charged me with it, and then went back to the surveillance tapes and cut that part out where I said, "No, that's a felony." Then they took the tampered with evidence to the grand jury on the 10th Circuit, lied to them, committed perjury to the grand jury, and got me indicted. Now, I sat in prison in solitary confinement knowing that those ATF agents had doctored the tapes and all. That's why when I got out, I hired that tape expert, Val. And he did digital forensics on those tapes. And he had 100% proof to a legal standard that those tapes were tampered with. That's a felony. That's obstruction of justice. And they wouldn't let me get that into court because the whole ATF agents would have went down to prison. He told me, he says, "They're not going to let you get this in the court. They're going to lose their jobs. This is the nation's top cop. They're going to lose their jobs and they're all going to prison." He said, "They're going to kill you first." And they damn near did, John. I got all the medical files to prove it.
Wow, man, this is something else. Well, let me ask you this, Cody. What's next? You got your book out. It says here that you were looking for a publisher. Do you have a publisher?
Yeah, here's what we got. In fact, one of those calls we took at the break was a guy about the copyright on the book right now, and we have some CD copies that are available to people through my email. It's Cody Golden Elk at yahoo.com. That's my Indian name. I'm part Cherokee Indian, so it's Cody Golden Elk. But what we did, John, was we've been passing these things out just so it'd get out in case something happened to me. And right now we have 3 different publishers who are talking to us, and we have 2 different movie deals working. One is over in Copenhagen in Denmark with Ole. And there's another guy I know in New York that we sent a copy to, and they're talking a bunch of big numbers and all this stuff. But I just want everyone to know I need money to live on, but I'm not greedy. I don't want to be greedy because then I'll be like Bill and Hillary Clinton, and I don't want to be a slime like that. So we're going to start a healing center if we ever get a bunch of money, and that's what this is going to be. But my main concern, John, was just to get the truth out. I suffered horribly. I sat in Supermax prison. I lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting in court and doing all this stuff. I've suffered horribly, but my story's nothing compared to people like Philip Marshall and Seth Rich and our veterans who are sitting in all these VA hospitals with this horrible Gulf War syndrome, autoimmune, our Vietnam vets with the Agent Orange, and they're dying like flies. My suffering's nothing. I just want to use my platform here, to just say that we are spiritual beings of light, and we can choose while we're here on the earth, the light or the dark. And I am going to choose the light. That's why I call this book Choosing the Light. I don't care if I'm the only one. I don't care if I'm the only man left alive. I will stand up against this darkness. And if they kill me, then so be it. But I will go to my grave knowing that I held my head high, and no matter what happened, that I would fight, even though there was absolutely no chance of winning, rather than live the rest of my days as a slave.
Well, I'll tell you what, the deck would appear to be stacked against us. You know what I mean? Kind of looks like it's stacked that way. We might not be able to win, but I'll tell you this, maybe we can get even. That would at least reset things, so we might be able to preserve this republic before it's destroyed. That's what they want to do. I mean, you hear them say our democracy all the time. It's not a democracy at all. It's a constitutional republic, but they want it to be a democracy, because that way,
right.
If you get a majority of morons in there, then the smart ones will just have to shut up and take a back seat. Just don't say anything. Just do what you're told. And we see what authoritarians, these so-called, I mean, they call themselves all kinds of things. Let's see, are they leftists? Are they Marxists? Are they socialists? Are they progressives? Are they, liberals? Well, they can't use the term liberal anymore. For them to use the term liberal anymore, it just tells you that they are totally eaten up with falsehood and don't even know. They're either lying or they don't know what they're talking about. And either way, it's unacceptable. But there's nothing liberal about them. They're control junkies. And frankly, I think they're more inclined to violence than anybody would guess. Last week I read something about this from the left has taken such a beating now that it's just about finished. Well, it's going to come back, but this writer argued that when it comes back, it's liable to be in a very violent form, like worse than Bill Ayers and blowing up little buildings and statues and such. So I don't know where we're headed, but without action, folks, the important thing to remember is this. Look how the law is being twisted and broken in D.C. right now. Look how the FBI, they're going to destroy Michael Flynn, but Hillary Clinton walks. Oh, it's a selective prosecution, or it's parallel construction, where you don't even know what the evidence is that's being presented against you. Do you understand that what they're doing is against the law of the land? It's against the law. And unless we stand up to them, they'll continue to do it. They'll continue to break the law. More egregious breaking of the law every day until there's no place to go. We're locked down. There's no rule of law other than the law they make up on the run. And I'll tell you what, Cody, if anybody knows that would be you, because and just to refresh everybody's memory, who was Barry Seal and why was he murdered? Because clearly that was a contract hit. He didn't just give the finger to the lowrider.
Yeah, John, that's great you tied that back in, because this goes to the heart of the Clintons cover-up machine. And Barry Seal was murdered on February the 19th, 1986. Okay, he had been the contract pilot for the CIA in Operation Centaur Rose. There were two other operations there. One was Jade Bridge, which they were bringing up Contras and training them and pilots on those little 172s and Piper Cubs and stuff. They were training them to fly, and they cut out little airstrips in Occidental National Forest there in Arkansas and stuff, and they were training them how to fly. And then Screwworm was the third op, and that was out of Mexico City. It was basically a weapons op. But Barry Seal was a contract pilot through Centaur Rose, and we were moving a lot of the weapons. The last truckload I had was, I don't know, half a ton or more of C4. I had 6 spools of 1,000-foot roll deck cord. We had some 3-second tripwire grenades, for the tripwires, and assorted small arms. And they were flying that stuff down there. And so Seal they got done. They were cleaning up the op. There was a lot of people murdered and shut down there. Bill Clinton had hired the state medical examiner too, which would cover up everything. And they had guys with their heads cut off with butcher knives, and they said it was a suicide. That's true. That was Kevin Ives. I've got the stuff on him. But anyway, Barry Seal had flown all that stuff, and now it was over. So the DEA planted him with some evidence. It's a standard deal to shut him up. And he was at the Federal Halfway House down in New Orleans when he was working during the day and going back to the facility at night. And he pulled up one day on February 19th, 1986, late in the afternoon after work, and 4 Colombian hitmen with MAC-10s. They did 9mm MAC-10s. They didn't even use silencers. They had no gloves, no black mask, nothing. And those federal halfway houses, they have cameras all over the place. They just walked up machine gunning point blank. So when they searched Seal's trunk of his car, there was a code in there. And inside that code was found a piece of paper, and written on that paper was the phone number of George Bush Sr.'s private phone.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's the truth. Now, also that same day, February 19th, 1986, there were 25 to 30 Colombian drug lords that were assassinated in similar fashion. Pablo Carrera, the number 2 Medellin cartel guy, and Jorge Ochoa, one of the Ochoa brothers. And like I said, my girlfriend, she had dinner with Escobar and used to work for him down there and stuff. So we know a lot more about this. But suffice it to say that there was a big cleanup going on after the Centaur Rose op. And so later, this is great stuff here, John. Later, after Barry Seal was dead, there was one of his personal planes. It was a 1982 Beechcraft King Air 200. You're probably familiar with some of that.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that was found on a ranch in Texas. Guess where it was? Crawford, Texas.
Is that a fact?
It's a fact. It was at George Bush Jr.'s. The FAA number of this Beechcraft King Air 200, the FAA number was N63085. The serial number on that plane was BB1014. Now, the person who broke this story is a personal friend of mine. His name's Michael Rupert. He was the LAPD narcotics officer. He was the one, your listeners can Google this up on YouTube. He was the one that confronted the CIA director at a public meeting out there in California and called out the CIA for dealing drugs. He was in the LAPD narcotics, and they were bringing all those drugs from Nicaragua through there and fronting it to the Crips and the Bloods gangs. And the CIA would wave them off. Their narcotics officers would work hard trying to make busts. Yeah. When they got up to the CIA guys, Rupert called him out, and it's all on tape. Mike Rupert's the one that first broke the story. He had a newsletter out of the wilderness up in Seattle, and then they went in there and trashed his place. And he showed me, they tore his computers up and showed me all the pictures. Then they poisoned him, blah, 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 blah. So all this stuff about Barry Seal was true. It went straight back to the Bushes. All this evidence has been covered up. It's been tampered, death threats, you name it. It's the same old drill, John, over and over and over. I know so much more than all this, but this is just, you only got so much time and so many pages in a book, but I'm just here to tell the American people this stuff is true. I saw a lot of it. I didn't see all of it. I'm not Mr. Know-It-All, but these things are real. The shadow government is real. And if we don't expose it and shine the light on it, these little cockroaches like the Clintons, they're going to keep this stuff up. And they're going to keep ruining our world and bombing our buildings. I mean, John, when the Mura Building went up, it killed 168 people and injured over 680. It damaged 324 buildings over a 16-block radius. Yeah. It shattered glass in 258 buildings and destroyed 86 cars and cost $652 million in damages, most of which the taxpayers had to pick up.
Yeah.
All to cover up the anthrax and the Gulf War and the Clintons' little dirty deals in Arkansas.
And it was all about
We got to wake. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and in the end, it was all about money.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And our veterans suffer, just like they suffered in Benghazi while Hillary and Obama run off with all Gaddafi's gold. He had a lot of gold bullion. He'd been trading his oil revenues to the Russians for years. They went in there and stole all that stuff, cooked up ISIS. The whole thing was lie after lie. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are in fact guilty of a conspiracy to commit treason against the United States Constitution and against the United States of America. That is the truth. They are guilty of a conspiracy to commit treason.
I don't know. I don't even know what the hell to say now.
Well, I'm sticking my neck out because I'm talking about some powerful people, but I hope they all go down for what they did. I hope that they go down and that their lies are exposed. I hope that John Kennedy, what really happened to him, comes out and they unseal those records and they're not redacted to where there's only one word out of a whole blacked out sheet. And I hope that the CIA people can straighten up a little bit and actually start providing intelligence and helping our country instead of running all these black ops everywhere. But I don't know. All I can do is speak truth to power and try to do the best I can. And if they kill me, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
I've resigned myself to I already died twice. So I don't know, John. I want to thank you for everything. I don't know what to say either. I don't know how to say it. I don't know what to do except hold the light.
Yeah.
Just hold the light, speak the truth, and stand up. Just stand up. And no matter what they do to me, they can't change the fact that I stood up.
No, they can't. You may not know much about this. And on the other hand, you might know a lot about it. Honduras is absolutely positively melting down right now. I mean, they got death squads running around. They've shot a bunch of protesters over this election because the U.S. installed government down there just doesn't want to let it go. And the elections have said, you lose, you're out. No, they don't want to let it go. So is it your understanding that the U.S. intelligence services pretty much own Central America? Because that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, it started back with the United Fruit Company, in Guatemala. That was all these things have been going on for a long time. If you really want to hear some really good stuff sometime, we can talk about, I was down in Colombia and Peru and all through there. And we have some really good, about what was really going on down there with the CIA and the drug trades and Operation Snowmass and a bunch of them. And stuff, but they've been down there controlling and manipulating behind the scenes. They did it to Mossadegh in Iraq, over there in the Middle East. They've done it all around the world. And a lot of times what our intelligence agencies do is they go overseas and they do all this dirty stuff. Well, the people here in America never hear about it. The citizens, all they get fed is the spoon-fed propaganda and crap.
Oh, sure.
And then the blowback comes when people like those terrorists wear suicide vests and blow the hell out of everything. And then they put it in the news like, why did these guys attack the American embassy in Beirut and kill 240-something Marines over there? Why would a guy drive a truck bomb over there? Well, there may be a reason that the intelligence agency did that no one over here knows. And they went and did a bunch of dirty stuff in Beirut. And so they retaliated against our intelligence agencies by killing the Marines. But we never hear the truth over here. That's why I'm trying to tell the truth about Benghazi and the truth about some of this. We've got to wake up. Our media is most of it is completely controlled.
Right. So, yep, they sure don't like any freelancers. They want you to just toe the company line and don't step out of line, because if you do, they'll just fire you. However, sometimes that's just not enough. Look,
John, I bet you've been hit just doing what, since you left over there coast to coast, I bet you've had all kinds of stuff happen to you you don't talk about.
Yeah, it's true. You know,
Yeah.
people think, how hard can it be? Put a website together to do your little podcast. Number one, it's not a podcast. Number two, it's not little. And number three, we had some grown-ups. We had some real, no kidding, qualified grown-ups trying to do this, and we ran into problems I didn't even know you could have. It's extraordinary. And just, I want to say this again. I said it at the beginning of the program before you came on, but it was the divine Miss B is the designer of the site. She designed the whole thing. She constructed the graphics. She designed everything, which is why I would hear my dad's voice in my head. He seemed to be saying, "You let this girl go and you're a damn fool." And I'm like, really? So guess what? I married her, and I'm not letting her go. But she's the one that did this, and she knows more about all kinds of stuff that it probably wouldn't be cool to say now, but not that. I'm talking about computer stuff. But it's been a monumental task. You would think, hey, I'll just get a template and I'll just make a website. How hard can it be? It can be very hard if you want to do this. And I mean, phone games, email games, weird calls. I mean, the most recent one, does this sound familiar? Cody, let me run this one past you. I get a call to this woman that sounds like one of those California anchors, that woman that's freaked out and started talking baby talk out of nowhere, just started going, you know, that thing. Somebody's doing this. And I go, your signal is terrible. You know, who is this? And I said, well, call me back when you got a better signal. I just hung up. A couple hours later, I got another call from a guy going, man, and I'm like, I can't understand anything that you're saying. What are you saying? Oh, man. I hung up on him. Well, both of these calls came from a number on my caller ID, right? I know the person whose number this is, except that person didn't make the calls. In other words, the phone number was hijacked by two different people, and they just called and made moronic one-way conversation over my mobile phone. And the number of a
they're
friend.
They're tying up your time. They're tying up your time, and then they're messing your mind up because you're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Well,
yeah, I mean, it'd be like some moron calling me and you know, bubbling in his spit, and your phone number is on my caller ID, and I know you're not. That's not you. Oh, and in fact, this fellow who works for us, Olis, he's part of the crew. He said, "Man, did you do that?" And I said, "What?" He goes, the old lady that needs toilet paper. That was fantastic. But I could sort of tell it was you. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, the call came from," and he gave me my mobile number. And I went, "Well, that's my mobile number, but I did not call you. And I sure as hell wasn't impersonating an old lady who needed toilet paper." Okay. So it's from the sublime to the silly, from the complicated to the crude. We get it all. And,
well, here back November 22nd, 2017, just last week, Ole over there in Spain, we were going to do a show, and he'd linked us up to several of the European stations, and we'd been setting this Skype thing up for a long time. And finally, we had the date and the time, and about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before the big interview,
yeah,
I'm sitting here on my computer screen, and then it starts flashing from black to white, and then all this computer code lines just came across, all that gibberish, and then it flickered and flashed, then it went black, then it came back white, then more computer code, then it went back to what I was watching. I was watching a YouTube video. And after that, John, this thing is trashed. I mean, I couldn't access Gmail, I couldn't access Yahoo. I missed my link with Ole. I could not get hooked up. And now we've had to buy another set of computers and everything. We're going to throw this thing away because they sent us a really doozy of a virus here.
Got to ask you something.
Yeah.
Did you have a somewhat profound ringing in your ears after that?
Yes. Yes. I have another woman who was down there. She had dinner with Daniel Ortega, the president of the Sandinistas, the communists. They hit her computer up here. She was talking about all that stuff, and she had earphones on, and they sent something that blew her eardrums, and she had to go to the doctor. She's lost part of her hearings. They sent some kind of signal, audio carrier wave, through her computer, and she has to wear hearing aids now because she was talking about what she really saw down there in Nicaragua. She was a missionary, Christian missionary, and she was invited to the president's house. And so she had firsthand knowledge of a lot of those death squads and the murders and the things that were going on in the camps and the children. And she started talking about it, and they did that thing. And my ears were ringing after this. I don't know what happened. I've never seen anything like this. My girlfriend has a degree in computer science, and she's trying to figure this out, and she doesn't know what they did. She has a degree in computer science, and this is some kind of weird thing. When we get our new one hooked up, I'm just going to throw this away.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, look, let us commit to, I've got your number, and you probably can avail yourself of, some of those encrypted things that you can get for free. I mean, even WhatsApp's better than nothing. It really is. And let's communicate in the future, and let's reconnect in the not too distant future. I really mean it. Like I'm talking about in a matter of days, not in a matter of weeks, because you're pulling a lot of exposure doing this. I know that you are. But the more people who know about you and your work and your book, I think the safer you are. And you've convinced me you're not suicidal. I hope I've convinced you. Do I sound suicidal to you? Well, I'm not.
Oh, John, you're a tinfoil hat conspiracy kook, buddy.
That's me. Tinfoil sombrero wearing dude. Big lump conspiracy dude. That's me. Thanks for being so forthcoming with this information. It's like, I'm sure there's a lot more, and I want to get into a lot more of it as your time allows. And, Jeff Rent seems to be a pretty good guy, he actually wanted us to sort of become a part of his operation a little bit, but I thought the best thing to do is just stay independent, just stay, let Jeff do what he does. We'll do what we do. Let everybody just kind of, we don't need to, let's keep our association tight, but there's no reason to actually, join each other's organizations. We're better off if we just stay separate entities and just do our own thing. And then that way, if somebody screws up, whoever it might be, it doesn't take the other ones with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just sort of, okay. Well, look, God bless you. And everybody's book is Choosing the Light, Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing, 380 some odd pages. And if you want it, how do we get it, by the way? I didn't ever ask.
Right now, we're setting up a whole deal, and we're in negotiation with publishers right now and everything. But for right now, before these publishers get their mitts on it and chop it all up, and they're going to cut it up, no doubt. We have some CD edit copies on Adobe 6 Reader discs, and you can get them. Just email me. We have people here helping at Cody, CODY, Golden, GOLDEN, ELK, ELK, at yahoo.com.
Okay.
And so you can email me, and we've got a whole bunch of these discs run off. We can mail them out and stuff, and we're selling them for like $15 or $20. Sometimes we give them away, John, to people. We tell them if you don't have the money and you're a little bit broke, we'll send you one anyway, because we are trying to just get this truth out while I still can.
Okay. Well, check your email box. There's something in there for you. And
yes, sir.
We'll talk again soon. All right.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
All righty. Bye-bye.
God bless. I'll tell you. Folks, I really mean this. It's going to take all of us. It's fine to let somebody else go out there and do our fighting for us. It's fine to let somebody else go out and do the investigating for us. It's fine. We'll just sit at home and wait until it's safe to come out. We're Americans. We're Americans. We were the best that Europe had to offer. By the way, that little puke that wrote that deal about, I hate you because you're the dominant apparatus on the planet and everything that comes in contact with you dies. Well, he got his stupid self fired, which is good. However, he did do us a service. He did us a service by letting us know exactly how the left feels about us, how people, a measurable percentage of people of color, not the caravanners. We have Black people who are caravanners. They totally get it. They reach out all the time and say, we're totally with you, man. Seriously, you're my brother. You know, men and women, they do it all the time. But there is a contingency of really ignorant people out there, and they're dangerous because their ignorance has absolutely overwhelmed any possibility of them doing any actual rational thinking. So look, there's only so much understanding of that mindset that we can tolerate. And so I don't think it's necessary that we fully understand it. We just have to stop it. And that's the same thing with this government, this shadow government. It's nothing more than a criminal syndicate, the biggest one the world has ever known. A criminal syndicate that makes the Russian oligarchs and all that stuff that went on, the KGB was good, was damn good. Stasi was damn good. Scotland Yard was damn good. Really were. Gestapo was damn good too. But they're nothing compared to the deep state apparatus that these mugs right here in Washington, D.C. have had and operate all over the world. It's just the way it is. We're all expendable in their view. Okay, well, we're all expendable anyway, because as Tyler Durden said, on a long enough timeline, everybody's survival rate is 0. So if you know that one day you're going to check out of here, as in die, I ask again, what exactly are you afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of. They may have poison and they may have guns and they may have this and that. I don't know about you, but I've got better than a 45, the old 1911. I've got faith in God Almighty. I have salvation through the Lord Jesus Christ. And I want you to have it too. Because compared to that, everything that we do in this life adds up to nothing. Read your Bible, get into it. You catch the Old Testament later. A good start, just read the first 10 chapters of Matthew. It won't hurt you. You'll feel better. Read John. Read Revelations. Read all of it. It'll be the best thing you ever did. It will awaken things in you you don't even know are there. And you'll understand this isn't about guns and knives and who's tougher than the other one. It's not about that at all. It's about evil and slavery and darkness versus truth, freedom, and light. Make your choice. Because if you don't, it'll be made for you. Not choosing is choosing. Be seeing you.